Folks, when we think about the brilliant game of Wiffle Ball, we tend to never think about really how far it's come from its humble beginning. There have been numerous leagues, numerous players, numerous young fans of the brilliant game that have taken it to incredible heights. One league that we all know better than any other league here in the United States of America has taken it beyond where anyone ever would have imagined it would go. That league is Major League Wiffle Ball. And today, on the Scuffin It Up podcast, we will be discussing everything you need to know. Cue the music.
And welcome back, Wiffle League fans, into America's #1 wiffle balling show, not already on Holy Commutes. This is the Scuffin It Up podcast, second episode of the second season, bringing you all things wiffle and our newest segment of the Wiffler's Almanac. I am your host, Ben Fiore, bringing this episode recording on Thursday, the 20th of April, year of our Lord 2020 trace. Recording from Studio 8 in Poughkeepsie, New York, as per usual, as per the sign would suggest. Hashtag dilly dilly on that one. Joined as always by the world's greatest co-host in all of Wiffle. Now part of the namesake of the show, because we've now decided to go beyond one season and make this, a financially viable product, which will probably give us about $3 and maybe a candy bar at the end of the season, if that's what we want to call profits. Thankfully, though, today for Conor, he is joining us not from his bunker, his nuclear bunker, but he is joining us from what appears to be like his Emirates first suite. Very well dressed, dapper, as I guess you could say. Really looking the part and really looking to get into the episode as our MLW analyst, which we'll be talking about in a second. But first, Conor, it's great to see you. You have, I guess, really dressed up for the occasion here. And how you feeling there, boss?
I'm feeling good as always. And, folks, we have a lot to discuss here today. And we have a lot to learn about all things wiffle, more specifically in the Major League Wiffle Ball scene. Given all of the things that have happened in the past week, we have plenty of stuff to go over. And we'll get into that later on. But for now, Ben, I just have one question to ask you.
Wow, I'm getting a question this early in the podcast. I'm impressed, but please, I insist. Go on. Go forth.
What's the deal with your style? Like, why do you look like that?
Well, if I had to say so, unfortunately, the fact that I'm in the college life doesn't allow me to accumulate the most amount of riz when I want to come on the podcast. So, it's more like wearing the starter pack and going with whatever you got. It's like showing them my fucking 2K and you just pick the clothes you got, you just roll with it. That's just what we've gotten. I mean, we got the beautiful dapper, I guess you could say, powder blue shirt going on. It's a beautiful 75-degree day here in Poughkeepsie. Can't complain in mid-April when we get weather this good, and weather that will be. I wish it was coming to York for this weekend's MLW opening day tournament for the start of the season, but unfortunately it's not. But Poughkeepsie, shout out Red Foxes, or I guess you could say Red Coyotes after what happened on campus. If you're in the know of Marist College, you'll definitely get that. But I guess that'll probably just be me, considering our audience for this show. Regardless, though, as Conor was alluding to with his rather dapper look, as I'll probably refer to it plenty of times today, with today's episode, we are starting a brand new style, brand new, I guess, format of the show, if you want to put it that way, that being the brand new Wiffler's Almanac. This is going to be a new kind of mini series for the next couple of episodes where we're going to dive into some of the major leagues, not pun intended by MLW for today, but some of the major leagues falls from coast to coast, dive into their teams, dive into players that catch our eye, as well as storylines that have accumulated over the offseason, and give our thoughts as to how the season might go and what you might expect over the next couple of months, where there'll be plenty of wiffling action wherever you will be, except probably in Wyoming, because I don't think there's much in the way of wiffle ball in Wyoming. But apart from that, and also probably continental Alaska and Hawaii, because we should wiffle ball in Hawaii. Shout out Hawaii. Go buy some wiffle balls if you can. ExcursionsDuringYourHealth.com. Great discounts. But if you're not in those 3 states, I think you're going to be in really good shape to watch some amazing wiffle ball as it happens throughout the season. And it just so happens today we're going to start the series off with America's #1 wiffle balling league, Major League Wiffle Ball, the MLW, out of Bryan, Michigan, with Commissioner Kyle Schultz. A league you're probably all familiar with. But the league has been going on since 2009 and will be operating its 15th season in 2023, which is crazy to think, considering that they started off with a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds for Kyle and Tommy, and Danny Schultz was like 7 or 8 years old, and look at them now. They're hitting bombs, and now they're getting cursed out in YouTube comments, just like actual Major League Ball players. So, it comes full circle for all of them. But before we go into more of our thoughts on that, because there's plenty to talk with, like the draft and the roster moves that have occurred the last couple of weeks, especially in the recent timing of that, we did want to go into, of course, a little bit of wiffling news from around the country. The fastest way we can do it is to do it in under 180 seconds or less. You know what that means, Conor? You know what time it is? Say
Is
it
it
now.
time?
It's not time to duel. It's time for the Wiffle in 180, which I'll play here for a sec. Oh, no, that's wrong. That's the wrong one, Ben. Oh, geez. That's good. Let's click the right one.
Oh, my God.
We've done it again. We have absolutely
Come on, Ben.
done it again. There we go.
He's done it again. He's done it again.
I'm going to do it again. I'm going to bring everyone all the Wiffle news from across the country, coast to coast, in 180 seconds or less here on the Wiffle in 180. Compared to last week, where there was like basically...
Ben.
I will. Trust me. Give me a second. Don't rush my craft. Let me cook, Conor. Let me cook. Please. But coming back to what I was saying, though, compared to last week, where there was a bunch, almost basically months worth of content to cover into and dive into some storylines from all the different leagues and stuff, locally to us here in Connecticut and around the country, there is unfortunately not as much as going on, as we're basically all just in the purgatory waiting period as for the season's going to start in just the next couple of weeks. So a couple of storylines to go into, but I mean, as always, if you are a long fan of the show, you know what to do. Pull out your stopwatches, pull out your calculators, pull out your non-disclosure agreements from your place of employment, pull out your fists, pull out your thumb wars, pull out the New York Rangers, who, by the way, are 2-0 in the series against the New Jersey Devils if they win Game 2 tonight. So hopefully they take care of that. Go Rangers, go New York, go on that. But regardless, let's go ahead and get this started, and we will do so to get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1.3, 1, and I got Conor for a false start. I've seen you made forever, and go. Let's go ahead and get started here with, of course, the biggest tournament that will be kicking off the wiffle ball season across coast to coast in 2023, that being the 2023 MLW Atlantic Wiffle opening day tournament, which will be played this Saturday, the 22nd of April, from Shy Wiffle Ball Park and Dallastown Community Park, if I'm getting that name right. Both of those sites in York, Pennsylvania. This has been probably the biggest hype tournament, almost the baby nationals for fast pitch wiffle ball enthusiasts, with 24 teams from coast to coast expected to be in attendance. Unfortunately, since the registration, since the draw of the tournament occurred this past Sunday, there have been, over the last 2 weeks, 2 teams that have dropped out. Those 2 teams being 80.4, the team with many MLW players, including Caden Irwin, Jimmy Norp, and Jackson Pearson, just to name a few, as well as Nick Saylor, too. I should throw him out there, too. Shout out Nick Saylor. As well as the RV Rebs, a team that played in the Long Island Mid-Atlantic Tournament last July, as well as appeared at the MLW U17 National Invitational last October in York, Pennsylvania. Those 2 teams were confirmed to be out of the opening day tournament, unable to show, per the Holy Commutes podcast. And per Mid-Atlantic Wiffle on Twitter, they have confirmed that the Long Island Dumps and Ridley Park Blue Balls will be taking those spots to fill the field that will remain at 24 teams. Again, that tournament will be played this Saturday, the official start to the fast pitch season across the country in 2023. Also, to go off the storyline heading into the opening day tournament is with one of the more featured teams, the Canes, the team that was made its way all the way to the semifinals of UWFs in October, this past October, I should say. A player that was noted off the roster at first was Cameron Smith from Mo Whiff. It has now been confirmed that he will be able to join the team, as he will be joining his former teammates of Kenny Stengel and Devin Torres, as well as now his new teammate, which will be Nico Ruiz, which if you don't know Nico, go give some love. We came for those whiffs. He will be making his whiffling debut this weekend for not just fast pitch, but competitive whiffs in general. So fun to see that team at full strength as well as with Ruiz. So great to see that from an Atlantic. 24 teams going on there. Bring it back to the league. That's the subject of this episode. Major League Wiffle Ball. They have just recently announced that they will be conducting a celebrity series at their, I guess, all too famous out-of-state venue at this point, the Shangri-La Resort in Afton, Oklahoma. That will also be going on this Saturday, the 22nd of April, and we're featuring several MLW players, including the likes of Jimmy Norp, Kyle Schultz, Tommy Coughlin, Brendan Baranowski, and Alec Warda. And also, there will be a surprise guest to feature at the series at some point. They, of course, as being a surprise, they haven't told us who it will be yet, but if you're in town and able to go see that, make sure you go pop out for what should be an awesome way to help the hype get up for the start of the MLW season in 2023. And we'll wrap things up. Coming back to our neck of the woods, Connor, here in the Wiffling state of Connecticut. We had some series play the last couple of weeks in the Norwalk Family Wiffle Ball League. There was only one series that's been confirmed on league social media, which saw the Rowayton Raiders sweep the Downtown Bombers. This improving the early record of the Raiders to 4 wins and 2 losses in their first 6 games. Something that we should definitely be focusing on the next couple of weeks with regards to the backyard rankings when those come out very shortly. And that, I know, but not rather shortly on news, but probably long on time, is this week's Wiffle in 180 seconds. Connor, you've seemed to already be wanting to be jumping at the bit to make a comment here. I'll let you have the floor for a sec.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think you definitely made it under the time. I think it was you gave us all the news that I think needed to be given, and yeah.
Job well done. I've done it, folks. I've managed somehow managed to go overtime and then go undertime in back-to-back weeks. Seems ironic, isn't it? I guess you could say it, just like the Emperor's New Groove. Wow, it's all coming together.
Oh my God.
It all evens out.
For God's sake.
Maybe Isaac Newton was right. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I don't know. But still, regardless, though, that's the news for this week. A bunch of stuff going in Mid-Atlantic, and of course, a tournament that I am personally looking a lot forward to. That, of course, being the start to the fast pitch whiffling season from across the country, teams from coast to coast. That being the baby nationals before, of course, the big nationals occur with United Wiffle in October, or whenever the date is, because we still don't know the dates for that. Hopefully, we know that sometime sooner rather than later. But that is the news for this week. Probably going to cut it short for this moment because we have a lot of stuff to talk on this episode regarding, of course, what you've all come here for. The Wiffler's Almanac to talk all things Major League Wiffle Ball. We're going to go ahead and after this break, we're going to go ahead and talk about the biggest early point for the MLW season in our conversation, that being the previously held draft, MLW draft to be exact. And we'll talk it right here on this, the Scuffin It Up podcast, when we return in just a short bit. Stay tuned. And welcome back, Wiffling fans, into this Wiffle's Almanac edition of this, the Scuffin It Up podcast. I am, of course, leading the charge here, Ben Fiore, as a main host, as always. Joined, as always, as well, by the great co-host, number 2 man, the Men in Blazers for today, Connor DeCasa. And it's we come back from break. We, of course, want to start our talk about the MLW season.
Hold on a second. Can I cut you off real quick here, Ben?
All right, it'll be quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. I just want to talk real quick. I know we were talking about Ma, but I just kind of want to tie in Ma with MLW as well. Obviously, MLW, they were supposed to send a few players to that Ma tournament, and they were labeled as 80.4. And Ben, I know you could probably help me out here. There were definitely a few players from MLW that were going to go down and play, but wound up not coming to fruition.
Yeah, no, that definitely was, of course, I was saying the Wiffle 180. That was a bit of a sore sight to see.
Exactly.
But
exactly, and to be honest with you, Ben, it's really disappointing because at the end of the day, we've seen how the likes of MLW's players play against realistically their own guys. But when you think about whiffling talent in all of America, I think undoubtedly the top talent is all throughout the East Coast. More importantly, within that like Mid-Atlantic sector and New England area. So obviously, it's disappointing to not be able to see how they stack up against the top talent realistically in the nation. But at the end of the day, there is some great news for MLW itself in that they just held their draft this week.
That's right. Yeah, if you are switching gears now, the beautiful little segue there, Connor. Nicely done there. Taught you well through all the toils and tribulations of pilot episodes. Well, great to see that. Going off to what Connor was saying and what we're really talking about in this segment after this break here, the MLW draft just took place, being published out to YouTube for the masses. Everywhere on this past Friday, the 14th of April, that being released. And of course, over the course of that video, we saw the 8 players, 9 if you count AJ Ackerman as the undrafted free agent at the end of the draft. We saw all the players that are going to be joining MLW rosters for this year. And over the course of that draft, a number of things had taken place. We saw some trades. We saw some players, some say go a bit too high. We saw some players maybe go a bit low. There was a bunch of movement in an interesting draft class. So before we can talk about the teams, I think it's only fair to talk about where the teams really have a big chance to improve their rosters and really get themselves prepared for the upcoming season, that being the MLW draft. So definitely want to kick off that conversation here. And the first thing has to be what we learned just moments before the draft in the days leading up to it, that being the pick swap. Geez, Benny, get your words together. The pick swap between the Metro Magic and the Midwest Mallards. I know that the Mallards before initially had this trade being the number 1 overall pick. So basically this trade almost like Uno reversed it to give the Magic who back the number 1 overall pick that they had given up before. Of course, if you watch the video, if you haven't, I'll be summing up as of right now. But the Metro Magic took Grant Miller from the Kalamazoo Wiffle Ball League number 1, and the Midwest Mallards got Preston Colm from Bay City Wiffle Ball at number 2. I think it's definitely an interesting take to see that the Mallards would give up the number 1 overall pick, but at the same time, if you're going to take a player like Preston Colm compared to a player like Grant Miller, a player who's been in contention for being one of the best players in the country for the last couple of years now, almost like the sense of Jordan Robles last year. But to see that trade happen, I think the Mallards were content knowing that they could probably get their guy at number 2, and the Magic, I think, were happy to secure to really make a statement having the top pick and to get the guy who they feel that could probably be their franchise. So I think, in my opinion, it was definitely a good trade for both sides. I think they both knew what they're getting out of it. I think it probably would have been better for the Mallards to trade down if they never wanted Grant Miller in the first place. But it also has to make you wonder, if you're the Mallards, why wouldn't you pick Grant Miller on your team to complement Jordan Robles? Like, you'd have 2 fast pitch guys with a fair amount of experience who are some of the best players in the country. That team would be absolutely loaded. And plus, you'd also add another good bat into that lineup. So you'd have Robles, TC 35, or TC3, geez, whatever, yeah, TC3, and Grant Miller. So I mean, that collection of 3 guys, I wouldn't want to face them. So I feel I don't know on that one personally. As a Mallards fan, especially being a person who's watched the Mallards for a while, I don't know why we don't go for Miller there.
Right. I mean, when you think about it this way, Ben, I hate to be this sort of guy, but I'm thinking that Tommy kind of did this for the fairness of the league. Because if they had Grant Miller and Jordan Robles on the same team, there's no question that they would absolutely dominate the league. No question.
Yeah, but who cares about competitive balance? You ought to have thought when you made the trade you might be losing an asset like that. So why should the Mallards be punished for something like that?
But at the same time, I think what the Mallards are really looking for is a guy who can complement Robles on the bump. Because other than Robles, they don't really have much really other than him. I mean, TC3, he was serviceable on the bump last year, but definitely not. I mean, he was definitely better than he was in years prior, but I don't think the reason they kind of fell apart at the end of the year was they didn't have that second arm that Robles could they didn't have the second arm so that Robles could actually have that rest that he needs. And I think realistically, yeah, you could get the same thing from Grant Miller, but I don't know. I think Grant Miller, the thing about Grant is he knows how to throw hard, and there's no speed limit as far as I'm aware in Kalamazoo. And to be able to have to make that adjustment, I don't get me wrong. Grant Miller for the Magic, I absolutely love that pick, and
I do too, 100%. I love that too so much.
He could 100% turn that team around. Him along with Bottom, that 1-2 punch on the bump, along with just Grant being realistically an even better hitter, their team could seriously, I think, actually come close to making a playoff push.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. But I mean, if I just take it for a second here, to go off that point with Miller, you really got to like that, number one, because we've seen him in UFs, especially the NCAA tournament in Kalamazoo and all the leagues he's played in the past and tournament circuits. Grant Miller is probably, I think it's fair to say, one of, if not the best hitter in fast pitch wiffle ball. He's done it time and time again. He's been the force of Kalamazoo, and it was a big reason why they actually made the why the Kalamazoo team made the 2020 NWA tournament championship game against HRL. Unfortunately, they lost it, but he hit a number of big hits, big home runs in that tournament. He also had a number of good showings last year playing Big Barrel for, I don't think it was for the first time. Could have been for the first or second season that he's done it, or probably the first season he's done it for like a longer period, apart from UFs. But we saw him with the Great Lakes Legion team, a team that was with a mish of guys, and he was able to help them get to a number of decent results. Even to the point where they could have very much been in mall playoff contention at the end of the season, which I'm not sure everyone necessarily thought about that, considering that they are a team full of Midwest guys. But apart from that, though, Grant's been a guy that, regardless of style, has been one to just hit tanks, take some absolute daddy hacks and really produce really whatever situation against whatever pitching he faces. So I mean, regardless of whatever the rules are in any league, especially with MLW, I think just being in a league like this is gonna propel his game to another level. And I really do think that, like, knowing that you have like players or like fans and the energy, people watching the videos, I think that's going to drive him to be even that much better and to really take in the MLW style that much better. As if he has to already compared to fast pitch with the way MLW has a restricted speed limit. But, I think I really do like Grant Miller at that number one overall pick. Hitting wise, I think it really fits the whole because, as we'll talk about soon with the outgoing Liam Jackson on the team. Who you have to hit on that team? Trevor Bonham, who's really swung a really lacking bat. You lost Jason Chadwick in the trade in the last season, probably the best hitter on the team at that time, and probably the best they've had in the history of the Metro Magic franchise since it was started. Jack Agner really, in all fairness to him, didn't really have necessarily a phenomenal season last year by any stretch of the imagination. Nothing really to write home about apart from the fact that he missed a couple of series, which might have hurt the energy of the team. So, Agner wasn't great, and honestly, your best hitter might have been Ryan Curdy, which is crazy enough to think, considering that about 2 years ago in 2021, he was the meme that helped them to get the walk-off home run against the D-backs, and now he's arguably your best hitter before going into the draft. So, there definitely was a huge need for them to, if anything, you do have the ace in Trevor Bonham. You definitely probably, what you do need is to get a whole lot of more offense on that team to really swing the bats against the elite pitching lineups that you face in the American League with the likes of Ryan Kratch, Nick Saylor and Kyle Schultz, likes of Sawyer Bean and Brendan Baranowski. If you want to compete in the AL, you got to have solid pitching. If you want to compete in MLW now, you really got to have. You gotta be able to hit these guys. Even if you get 1 run or 2 runs, you got to find ways to put the bat on the ball. And as we saw last year, the Magic didn't really do a whole lot of that. So when you take one of the best bats in the country, go ahead.
What I'm thinking Agner is hoping is that Grant Miller winds up being their Shohei Ohtani equivalent.
I could see that. But here's a question though, because like how Ohtani is, he's like also kind of basically near or at the ace role for the Angels, in baseball. When you look at that, is as much as we talk about being Grant, at least I talk about Grant Miller being more of an offensive piece, even though he has the ability to pitch and he has pitched for KWL and other leagues and done fairly well. Is it enough, though, to take the role from Trevor Bonham, who, even though they lost a bunch of games last year, they weren't, say, the most successful team in terms of success? You can't say that Trevor Bonham pitched all that bad. It really came down to the offense really being that historically poor. So, I personally, I could argue, Grant being the 2 and Bond being the 1. I think I see a world where that happens opening day, at least to start.
Definitely. I don't know what I think the Magic could potentially do is first off, do I think that Bonham stays the ace of that team? Yes, I think without question. When it comes to obviously MLW seniority, Bonham obviously has that, and over the guy who literally just got drafted. But I mean, when it comes to Wiffle seniority, Grant Miller definitely has that.
The resume
has that over Bonham. Exactly. And so I don't know. I think Bonham definitely stays the ace, but I think for opening day, I would not be surprised to see Grant Miller actually start game 1 to get his name out there and get his legacy started in MLW right off the bat, and kind of get his feet wet a little bit, see how he performs, and realistically, I am very excited for that game.
But yeah, to go off the point you're breaking there, Connor. As you bring that up, I kind of could buy the point where excuse me, I was having a little bit of a burp there. But I think you could buy the Magic tossing Grant Miller in game 1, because you drafted the guy who I think immediately is going to become the face of your franchise, considering where the team is
exactly
talent wise, and where else to make a statement in the first game and the first thing of the season, and to throw out your shiny new toy out to the world and say, hey, we got a guy who's going to save our franchise and have the Wildcats miss the playoffs, not us this year. So it could very well not just be necessarily a move of who you think is better. It could be also a move of, what's going to excite the fans, excite the teams, like what the Mallets had last year with Jordan Robles, toss him first game, first inning, get himself out there and look what it did for the team. It really just immediately changed the persona and the outlook. Not because it was Jordan Robles,
exactly,
but the fact you had the guy you just drafted, the number 1 overall pick, and he's out there being the face of your pitching rotation from the jump. It just sets the tone for the entire team and the entire season of how it's going to go. So, I mean, personally, I could see him as number 2. I mean, that's going to be an interesting decision for Kath and Jack Agner when the time comes for that series. But I mean, I honestly could see it going either way. I personally, I think whiffling MLW seniority, I would probably say Trevor Bonham ain't broke necessarily yet. So at least to start, Bonham's my number 1 to start. But I mean, it could very well happen the other way. That very much could be a swap. But regardless, though, I think we can agree that not Jack Miller, Grant Miller, excuse me, is a phenomenal number 1 pick. But you know who I like it also in this draft, and a lot of people have been saying that whether he's worth a number 2 pick, he could have been taken way lower or whatnot. But Preston Cone for the Mallets, number 2, and as we're talking about this trade, I think he was a really awesome pick. He's a player that I've watched him from Bay City, when I've been hearing about other parts like MLW podcasts or other things like rumors in the Wiffling scene. That Tommy Collins has been watching him since Bay City Wiffle Ball has been posting this stuff to YouTube back in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 with the videos they've been getting out and rolling out recently. And ever since I saw him play with the Drip Dogs in 2021, he was a player that just emanated energy, a player that has a very solid bat, who's actually a very solid pitcher, considering for his age and the format that he plays and what they do in Bay City. I thought he's a player that, you could develop over time, and really with that youth, it really contrasts, the age of guys of like Robles and Irwin and Tommy. So, I mean, when you get the 3 old heads and you get a very promising young Wiffler on that team, who will probably, I think, could very well argue to be the number 2 pitcher behind Jordan Robles. You solve that issue, and you also get a bat, which is going to also help. I almost forgot to say this too, that MLW's now got four batter minimum lineups now. So, you look at that lineup, and when you have that 4th bat, it's not going to necessarily be a downgrade or be, not to say fully demoted this way, but, be like an automatic out or not say, a once in a blue moon contribution. So I think it'll be a adjustment point offensively for Comio to get up to MLW snuff from a hitting perspective, but pitching wise, I really do like his energy. I like what he brings to the field. And I think the Mallets made a good pick for what they needed out of the pick. And I mean, if you're Tommy, do you really need to pick Preston Coleman number 1? Like, could you imagine Preston Coleman going number 1 in the draft over Grant Miller? Could you imagine the scenes if they if they kept the picks and they just still kept their selections? Like, Tommy would look like the biggest buffoon if the Magic accomplished anything this year. Honestly, It would
Mhm.
be absolutely insane. I mean, the MLW Discord would become a dumpster fire in an instant.
Granted, do I like I said before, Ben? Do I think the Mallards got their guy to be that number 2 potentially behind Jordan Robles? 100%. I think, like I was talking before, the reason the Mallards were struggling down the stretch is because they didn't have a number 2 to back up Robles, and yeah, TC3 was much more serviceable than he had been in years past, but now getting Preston Colm, I think the thing that Preston Colm has that I don't know yet, and it's yet to be proven, that I don't know if Grant Miller has. I think what Preston Colm has, he has more movement on his pitches.
I think so too. But then again, also 30, 40 feet against like Graham Miller tossing for 48 feet. So I mean, there is a bit of a
Right.
difference in the style, and also ball style is going to make a difference when you're going from
And
cut and scuff
when you
balls
think
versus
about it
like
this way,
the sandpaper ball. Yeah,
yeah, think about it this way though, too, Ben. When you're pitching from 48 feet, what MLW is? Remind me, how far?
I think it's 40 to the board, 38 to the plate, if I'm not mistaken. It's relatively
That's what I thought it was.
shorter, I should say.
Yeah. So Grant Miller has to essentially, in the type of wiffle ball he plays, he has to throw that shed, and I mean he doesn't have to put nearly as much movement on it if he just throws fast, and the hitters aren't expecting it. I mean, yeah, Grant Miller is a great hitter and a really, really good pitcher as well. But I think what he relies on, at least for now, more than anything, is throwing it hard. And I want to see, obviously, the first series, maybe even the second series. We might not see him pitch early, but I expect him to definitely pitch early. But I'm really intrigued to see what adjustment he makes to get into the MLW like pitching ace scene, because I think he has potential to definitely get into that high tier of MLW pitchers that belongs to Norp, Bonham, Daniel Schultz, maybe even Kyle. You can put him up there too, but I don't know. I think he has a lot to prove. I mean, well, he doesn't have a lot to prove in the fast pitch scene, realistically, that being Grant Miller. But he has a lot to kind of prove to us and see what adjustments he makes to realistically adjust to the MLW scene.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see that for both of them. I think for again, like you're saying with Miller, with coming down to see like we saw with Robles, adjusting not just to the ball, but the fact that you also can throw just as hard as you can from the distance. So, and from us playing like tournaments, like when we went down to Sona to play the tournament, Thanksgiving almost 3 years ago. That's crazy. 3 years since we did that. Damn. Regardless, though, it was different. Not being able to throw necessarily full fast pitch like 48 feet and have to toss some 40. Like it's like while it's great to be able to on your arms not to throw as far, it's definitely makes it a bit more crafty considering that you can't rely on velocity, and I think it's gonna be an interesting change. But then again, like we saw with Jordan Robles, I think it's only a matter of time before a seasoned solid whiffler like a Grant Miller is going to adjust, and I think he's going to be a very good solid arm. Still, though, I think his bat's better, but I think he's still going to be a very good piece. And again, the Magic got their guy, and the Mouths got their guy too. So we'll see how this goes, and I do want to bring it though before we move on to other players in the draft list, considering this is probably the biggest storyline of it. With regards to the trade, do you really think that this trade was made, like I was saying before, for competitive balance of the league, or do you think that the Mouths wanted Preston Colm originally? Like, because I've heard stories that both stories are true, but which one do you honestly think is more true? If it's me, I think maybe there was a bit of league interference. I personally think there could have been some league trying to balance things out. If you ask me, I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, like I definitely had brought up, I think there's definitely some sort of league interference there. But at the same time, you had actually brought up, I didn't know that Tommy had realistically been following Preston since like 2020, so he's been following his wiffle path for 3 years now. So I definitely think that there's potential for there to be some sort of league interference, but there's also very much potential that there isn't, because if you're following a guy for 3 years and you're watching him grow and grow, there's no reason to believe that, I mean, you wouldn't want to pick a guy that you've been watching for like a good bit and get him on your team while you still can.
But even though I know probably Tommy was sold on Preston, you can't tell me you look at Grant Miller being on the board and be like, it'd be really nice if we got ourselves an extra bat in the lineup. like if that were me, I'm sorry, I would blow the league balance. I don't care if I kick everyone else out of the league. If I can get my guy to help my team, to help my guys win the championship, especially with the Mals having won for a couple of years and coming incredibly close last year in the NLCS. Screw it. I'm taking the number one picker myself, and anyone else who doesn't like it, finds them else in the draft, because with the way the MLW is, I think there's a point where at least every year we're getting at least one or two fast pitch guys. So probably by the end of the decade, everyone will have a fast pitch player or two on their team at this point. So I mean, if not this year, then everyone will get their guy. But I mean, again, that hurts that hurts the Mallet. For the Mallets, you made the trade trying to prey on the Magic not doing so great, so you get the good pick. So it's like it's counterintuitive in a sense, but I think they really liked Colm, but it feels weird, and I don't know if you can see it one way or another. It's a really gray area, and I don't know. I feel really conflicted. I can't really prove one way or the other.
Because Ben, maybe Tom has the same worries that I have about Grant. Yeah, he's long been proven to be one of the best in the nation, and maybe, like you said, maybe the best hitter in the nation not by a mile, but definitely by a good bit.
Yeah.
But maybe Tommy has the same worries that I have, in that he doesn't know how he'll adjust to like losing a full 8 feet, and because I think I would think that Tommy has the same idea as me, and that he needs more of an extra arm than he needs hitting. I don't think he really needed
I don't
hitting.
know about that. I feel that's conflicting though, because I feel like the Magic definitely need a hitter, especially because they have Bonham. You could argue the reason they didn't win the NLCS in 2021 and they didn't win the NLCS in 2019 was they couldn't hit the lead arms in the season. Then granted, or 2022 NLCS, Ben, get your facts right there. But I mean, they face Playoff North, which Playoff North does Playoff North. I mean, it's magical stuff.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if you had an extra bat in that lineup, an extra threat, does Jimmy stay perfect all that series? Does it? I mean, you could, and also in the playoffs, you don't necessarily have to throw. You don't have to throw second arms.
Way.
I feel like the Mallets could go either way. You could get yourself a better bat, but you're still missing that second good arm and relying on Tommy, who I think it's fair to say is in the recession of his pitching health when it comes to that. And if you pick up a pitcher, you're feeling like you've got Kane Irwin, who was intermittent in terms of his contributions last year. So you feel like you win some and you lose some. It's a tough place to be for Tommy, but I think Preston's a good all around guy, and you're going to have experience, the ability to with the fact he's so young, to grow him for over the next couple of years. So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation for the Mallets, and just overall this whole trade was just interesting, as we probably spent way longer than we probably should talking about it. So very interesting how we're going to see this unfold over the season, and we'll see if it possibly overdoes the trade in the 2020 draft for the Cobras and the Gators, which involved who they involved Cheatham, Chris Cheatham. Thank you. I may have to play the Monopoly, the Jeopardy music to remind myself who it was, but eventually I got it. MLW genius right here. It's almost frightening. But that was, let's see how that unfolds over the course of the season. There also, with regards to the MLW, there also was a trade in the middle of the trade. If you were able to watch the video, there was another trade with the Metro Magic, this time with the Western Wildcats. This involves the Metro Magic getting the Wildcats' third overall selection, which would be their next selection after the number one pick. But the Wildcats would end up getting Liam Jackson from the Metro Magic. So an interesting trade to see there, considering I feel like the Wildcats could have gotten another pitching prospect personally, considering the fact we've seen Kyle regress in terms of his pitching performance last year. And Nick Saylor, I think, is slowly starting to get figured out as another two arm of the team. So I think it could be interesting to see him get another arm. But they went with another bat, to try to supplement things alongside the fact. So it really, I think, make them an offensive juggernaut. But I think when we look at, I guess, the Wildcats part of the trade, and we'll come back to the Magic in a second, but I want to take a break from them, considering we just dove into them for so long. Connor, I really do think that, like, for the Wildcats, it's a really big risk. Like, you're basically banking on Liam Jackson to go back to 2020, 2021 self. Otherwise, why on earth would you make this trade? I feel like for me, I would not. I like the pick swap because your guys and there's other things going on. But this trade, you're taking a risk at an offensive can when you already have two of the best bats in the league with the likes of Kyle Schultz and Nick Saylor. So are you just expecting, is Kyle's thought process here to just, swing their way out of games in the league, which has seen less and less runs scored per game over the last several years, with pitching getting so much better? Like, is that their thought process? Because I don't buy it.
I personally, I love the trade. I love the trade.
You do?
I think Liam Jackson belongs in a Wildcats uni.
Is the reason you're saying that because there's Liam and it reminds you of Liam Wallace from your own team?
No.
Come on, Connor. Come on, Connor.
No, Ben, I'm not. I think realistically, I mean, the Wildcats have been, and this is a well-known fact, the Wildcats have been the evil empire of MLW. Think about it that way. The Wildcats have been the evil empire of MLW. Who's been the evil empire of the MLB? The Yankees for the longest time.
Shout out Yankees.
Think about it this way, Ben. I know I've said that 3 times in the past 10 seconds, but regardless, Liam Jackson, he is. If he barrels it up, he's got a beautiful swing.
He's got a good swing, but I mean, last year, the last couple of seasons, it hasn't been there all the time. It hasn't been as consistent as he was when he first came in and no one knew him. It can't have the same value though. It doesn't.
But he is now being teamed up with literally the best hitter that MLW has ever seen. If anything, Kyle is definitely going to make some adjustments to be able to help him along, because the swing is there 100%. He's got, I mean, it's very underrated, but it's definitely one of the best swings in MLW. I'm going to go ahead and flat out say it. But
it's a good swing, sure. But we've seen the likes of Ty Smith, like another good player from PWL, another small league in Michigan, who they drafted last year. Ty Smith didn't show up. We saw him also do a trade too. Michael Aguilar, I think from 2020 or 2021, before he kind of phased out of MLW. I'm not sure if you could blame that one on Kyle, but he came over to the offensive team with a player who had a really solid swing and was a good part of that early Diamondbacks team, if you recall. And where was he? Not much of hit production from him. So where do I think there's going to be a magical transformation? We're going to turn this kid into a 3 over slugger lineup.
Think about this way.
Really?
Though,
Seriously?
How long has Liam Jackson been in the league too?
Probably about that's a little bit shorter than that, since 2020, middle part 2020, yeah.
Really? Okay. So I don't know. I still definitely
because remember he appeared in that famous Cobra's Magic series, which decided the playoffs in 2020.
Right.
That whole debacle.
Okay. I mean, I think there's definitely potential for him to be an elite pickup. I think there's high potential for him to be an elite pickup, but I mean, that's to be seen. We don't know, but we definitely will soon know whether or not he shows up and shows out. And to be honest, I'm kind of gaining a little bit of a soft spot for for the Wildcats. I definitely like the way Kyle runs his team. Obviously, I'm part of the major Cobras fan base, but at the end of the day, I don't know. It could turn out to be an elite pickup, or it could turn out to be a massive flop. There's pretty much no in between here.
Yep.
I think it.
I just don't buy. I'm on the end where I see a complete flop waiting to happen, and then you're going to wonder. You could have had, like, what the Magic got to talk their side of the trade. You could have had RJ Walgate, a now U17 national champion, one of the best young pitchers in the country right now. Mind you, RJ Walgate's 14 years old. He's going to be playing guys that are in their early to mid 20s. And honestly, in this Magic team, could very well be in contention to pitch at some point during the course of the year, alongside the facts of Bonham and Grant Miller, if the Grant Miller pitching stuff doesn't quite work out. So, with the fact that, as Wildcats, as I was talking before, they need pitching because Kyle's not it. Nick Saylor's serviceable, but you don't have an ace. Why not invest long term in a guy in a young lad, a young swashbuckling buckler like RJ Walgate? A guy who's pitched in big games before, has been able to pitch fast pitch, and I think a guy who, as many young kids are, have definitely emulated and played the MLW style at some point in their young careers, if you want to call it careers at that point. But I mean, why wouldn't you stick with like an RJ Walgate on the board? Why wouldn't you maybe go after as I look at the draft board, apart from that, why wouldn't you go after RJ Walgate if you're Kyle Schultz? Why do you want to double up on why are you doubling down on the one thing that you have and as an all-rounded team, you're going to suffer if this whole experiment doesn't go to plan, unless Kyle's just going to, turn back the clock as pitching 4 or 5 years.
But think about it this way. If this whole experiment doesn't go according to plan, what? They get a very early, maybe even like second, third overall. I would imagine not first overall. I would imagine that probably, to be honest, belongs to the Gators next year. I would be surprised if it doesn't belong to the Gators next year.
Yeah, we'll get them in a second, but I don't think the Gators are going to be having a phenomenal season this year again. I think if 2022 was bad, I think this is going to be even worse than that. But go ahead.
Yeah, but if the experiment doesn't work, they get a very early pick. And I think that's when Kyle really goes after his ace. Because for now, I think there's definitely who's to say that Kyle's plan is not to hit his way to wins. But
that's not how the league works right now. It's a pitcher's league right now. There's no much of the sport. It's a pitcher's game right now. It has been for the last several years.
Yeah, you're right. But at the same time, he's bringing in. Well, he already has Sayor, and he's had himself since the beginning. But bringing in Liam Jackson, that's another bat that has potential to be elite. And if those three can take off, I mean, I don't know. They'll cause close games, I think, but they could be able to squeak a few out if they get some serviceable pitching from either Kyle or Nick. But if that experiment doesn't work, and to be honest, I think that's the experiment that Kyle's going with this year.
To bring on that point, though. Just to say for a sec, though, because I think I'm going to make an interesting point here. Or not. It could be complete garbage. We'll see how you take this. Is Kyle making this trade and risking because, let's say he gets like an RJ Walgate. Does he really not? Do you think he feels that, with the way the AL is, with the fact, the Magic are probably going to have a resurgent year with a transcendent player like a Grant Miller. The Cobes and Preds are going to be at least in my opinion, and we'll cover it later on the podcast of this episode, they're going to be, the two top dogs in the AL. They were last year. They're going to see the dog fight it out this year. Like, does he taking this thinking like, what? If we get Liam Jackson and we turn it into a competitive team because we score, 5 runs a game, and personally I don't buy it, but if they get 5 runs a game and we win a couple games, we sneak in the playoffs, get some viewership, it helps us. And if not, we probably weren't a competitive team this year, to be honest. So we can go back to the board next year and lose it. But still, you're Kyle Schultz. You're a 6-time champ. You win the World Series how many years in a row? That'd be the most counterintuitive thing to take a year off from being a competitive team, at least for Kyle's case. I could see Tommy doing that. I could see maybe a Jimmy Norp doing that. I don't see Kyle Schultz taking a year off from trying to win a World Series. So regardless of the team he has. So I don't know if
I don't know. I think this is the year. I think this is the year that Kyle could actually play some strategy. I mean, Kyle not going after a World Series this year would definitely be an odd sight, but I wouldn't rule it out of the question. I would definitely. Let me ask you this, Ben.
But it's still not Kyle though.
Let me ask you this, Ben.
Go.
If they're failing at getting enough pitching prowess throughout this season or midway through this season, do they make a mid-season trade for an arm who can be their ace, or do you think they would just wait it out?
But who do you trade? You can't trade Kyle. So
Exactly.
you're telling me you're going to trade Nick Saylor, who's the heart and soul of your team right now? You can't do that.
Exactly.
That'd be suicidal.
Exactly. So that's my point. With the team that Kyle has now, what do you see them doing other than trying to hit their way to wins?
Which I don't buy. I really think it's a head scratcher because that's just not how the sport is right now. MLW's just gotten better with the talent pitching. Now the team's having 2 really good arms, sometimes even 3 with some teams. So, I mean, like look at the D-backs in this draft. They've now got the likes of Piska, Trey Flood, Jonah Heath, on top of Jimmy Norb. They have 4 guys who could all legitimately throw. Same with the Eagles. They have Dallas Allen, Daniel Schultz, and I'm drawing the blank on the third arm. I probably come into it at some point.
Very bold prediction here.
I don't know. This better be. If you're saying this is bold, this is going to be probably the most BS thing you've said in this podcast because you've had some bold takes here. But
very, very bold prediction.
Say it. Go on.
And don't get on me for this.
No, I'm gonna because I think it's going to be horse crap.
You're going to think it's horse crap. I think there's potential for it to actually be real.
Go on.
Nick Saylor could actually make a case for Cy Young this year.
No. Oh my God, Connor. What stuff are you smoking right now? Are you serious? No way.
420, blaze him.
Oh, shout out 420. Gotta love that stuff. But no way. Listen, Nick Saylor's a solid arm. But if we're being brutally honest, at least in the MLW style, he literally just flicks a slider and he gets like a slider and like a fastball. The kid, I like the fact that he made it this far in his career without getting figured out and getting absolutely whacked all over the ballpark is an amazing sight to see. There's no way Nick Saylor with 2 pitches when you have the likes of Jimmy Norb, Dallas Allen, Jordan Robles, in the NL with how good the pitching is, and in the AL with Ryan Kratz and Sawyer Bean and Brendan Baranowski. There's no way Nick Saylor is a Cy Young candidate. He's not even in the top 5. He may not even be in the top 10, even if he pitches at his best quality. Like, there's no way.
And what, Kyle Schultz is?
He isn't either. Frankly, compared to 2018, he is utter. I'd say he's near completely washed pitching wise. He gets shelled in some of the games last year. You've seen it. It wasn't prime time 2018 championship winning Kyle on the bump on the flat hill. No way.
I think when you think about it, Ben.
But why you saying that? But where the hell are you getting Nick Saylor Cy Young from? Because that is absolutely asinine. How?
The only.
If you're saying that, if you're saying that, then we should say Gus should be the MVP this year. Like, that is how asinine that statement is. Seriously, like, tell me I'm wrong. Like, you're laughing because you know I'm right. Like, that's asinine.
I did warn you. It was a bold prediction, a very bold prediction,
a dumb prediction. Who cares? It's bold. That's BS.
But hey, think about it this way. Nick Saylor performs with his bat basically better than anyone in the league in MLW right now.
That's a solid case, yeah. Okay, fair. Okay, you may proceed.
Right.
Go on.
Okay. If he becomes that 2-way player for the Wildcats this year, and this year they need him to more than any other year in the past, because otherwise they're not making the playoffs this year. I feel like they don't make the playoffs this year. If they don't get that pitching, I don't know if this experience.
Yeah, but to bring it together, like look at this. I am breaking your point of this. I am somehow winning this. Look at me. I am a genius. It's almost frightening. See,
I'm
I told you. The more you think about this Liam Jackson thing is a really washy trade. As bring this all together, you pass up a young prospect to basically try to swing your way to a World Series, which right now in MLW, I'm sorry, ain't happening. It ain't happening.
What I'm trying to say here, Ben. Here's what I'm trying to say here.
You just said that this experiment looks washy because they don't have the pitching. They need the pitching.
No,
and Liam Jackson ain't a pitcher. No, sorry.
They do have 3 top hitters in the league potentially. If Liam Jackson really wants to perform up to the level that I think he can perform, they have realistically 3 of the top hitters in the league on their team.
But where's the pitching? Where is the pitching, exactly. Connor? You're not answering the question.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If Nick Saylor is able to prove himself to be an actual top pitcher, which I don't know. I hope
Connor,
Nick
I'm
Saylor,
telling you, you're speaking heresy right now. I'm telling you.
I'm hoping Nick Saylor doesn't prove me completely wrong and gets absolutely shelled this year. But I mean, if the hitting is, because they like I've said like a dozen times at this point, they do potentially have 3 of the top hitters. But if that experiment doesn't work and they don't get the good pitching, they're not making the playoffs. Full stop.
Okay, so I guess you kind of agree with me now, kind of. Yes and
no.
In
what way?
In the fact that this was a very risky, not very solid trade for the future of the team.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's a solid trade for the future for hitting for their team.
Yeah, but they don't need hitting. They don't need hitting. They already have 2 pieces which aren't going anywhere in terms of, unless you're telling me you're going to move Nick Saylor.
Think about it this way too, Ben. If this fails, they get an early pick for next year. They draft their ace, and they're.
But again, Kyle's not the guy to take a year off from competition. That makes no sense. That makes 0 sense.
And what makes you say that? What makes you say that?
Because this is the same team that's won the MLW title 6 times. That, especially in the modern era, in the Meadows era, made it to the World Series in 2018. That was there in 2020 and 2021. I mean, apart from 2022, yeah, apart from last year, and they've been a competitive team every single year as a franchise. Every single year they've been legitimate World Series contenders, and this is probably the first time in the modern era of MLW where they've taken quite a step back. So, this doesn't seem like the Kyle Schultz move, in my opinion, and I don't buy it. I really don't. But if you want to say Nick Saylor was a Cy Young, I still stick by we should have Gus MVP. Hashtag Gus MVP if you want to toss it in the YouTube comments. For
Hashtag that. Connor 5 stars.
Hashtag Connor 5 stars. Hashtag Gus MVP. Hashtag Connor X Gus. Can you make it happen? I don't know. You'll have to listen this season and see.
Gus, come on, hop on the podcast, Gus. Come on.
Gustatus. We will make it happen. You know who to call. I'm just saying. I don't know what the hell that was. I don't know if he was trying to be a sharpshooter.
I don't know either.
Or make a cross-sexual reference. I don't know what that was, but I'll take it for what it is. I don't know.
Oh God.
I don't know. Good Lord help us all. But at least we proved Connor's a complete fraud on this podcast. So good job, MLW analysts. Great job. But before we wrap up the MLW draft, I did want to don't roll your eyes. You disagree with me. I'm not
roll my eyes.
I'm telling you, bro. Watch when we're watching this with nothing better to do in November. And I'm gonna say, I told you so, Connor. I told you so. I told you.
I told you, remember viewers. The last time? I told you so last year, so don't give me that.
You know what? It's an odd numbered year, so maybe it's my turn, okay? So chill out and let me cook. Let me cook to a 9 ERA per 5, because that's just how I do things. But
you remember what happened to the last person that said, let me cook?
What?
He absolutely failed miserably in the NFL for a team named the Denver Broncos.
Yep. Shout out Patrick Stork. Maybe he'll let me cook. I'll have to ask him. I'll have to see what he says. I don't know. Good Lord, help us all. We're getting distracted. But before we wrap up this MLW conversation, I did want to possibly give at least my draft grades for each of the 8 teams involved in the drafts. I know we talked about 3 of the teams involved with some of the trades at the top picks. But I wanted to at least give my general assessment of the teams and how they performed in this year's draft. We'll kick things off, I guess, from the order of the draft picks themselves. Of course, we'll be omitting the Gators because they didn't have a pick this year, but we'll go ahead and dive in. Metro Magic, Grant Miller, as we said, absolutely love. RJ Walgate could be a bit overkill depending if you want to play Trevor Bomb or not. It could be a good long-term option, but it has very promise. I mean, the kid's 14, so you give him Grant Miller, you let him coach this man to be an absolute, you've seen the wingspan on that dude. He's an absolute unit of a character. So you give him the right experience and the right knowledge set with what he's already developed. I think he's going to be a very solid, the opportunity to be a really solid option. Even if not number one, he could possibly be a really good number two, if you ask me. So you have those two, and then we'll have to see what AJ Ackerman's going to be, because nobody knows who the hell this kid is, apart from maybe a couple of round points. But Metro Magic, and for this team, go ahead. Before I get to
go back to Walgate, for 14 years old, he is probably one of the tallest and lankiest 14-year-olds that I think I've ever seen.
Dude, he's like 6'4", and then I don't know, exactly. I've looked like his Instagram and stuff where he's like, I want to thank the good Lord for putting me in the MLW. Like, I don't know if it's the fact you go to Sunday church or not, but my friend, I don't know what's working for you, or you're eating Wheaties. You are an absolute unit of a human being for 14 years old. He
is a specimen.
He is a true wiffle balling specimen. I mean, look at his wingspan, bro. Shaq is shaking in his boots when he sees his kid come down the flat hill. Like, seriously, he's a monster.
I am fully invested in seeing how his wiffling career turns out, because he has incredible potential with that sort of gift for being able to pitch on the mound. He won the under 17 championship potential. He won the under 17 championship as a 14-year-old, 3 years under the age limit, against the guys at MLW who are 16, 17. So it doesn't tell you what this kid might be able to do, at least on the pitching side. Hitting wise, I'm not necessarily convinced yet, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But then again, Walgate was for pitching, I gotta imagine, and also the long-term investment aspect of it. But for the fact that they turned the team around with two, 3 guys here, I gotta say it was a good draft. So I won't give him an A, because Walgate, I don't know if they're going to use him entirely, and I don't know if Ackerman's there for showboats or whatever it's going to be, but I think this team's going to be a lot more competitive, and they're going to be in the playoff race, which is, I think, what they're trying to do. So I'll give him a B+. I think is what I would grade him on for this, for the Magic. For the Mallards, Preston Colm, again, as we were talking about before, you get a possible second pitcher. Hitting wise, he's a guy who has some potential there. But then again, he's also not superstar talent, so he isn't an absolute sure bet that like a Grant Miller that he's gonna be like, oh my god, we're gonna turn this team around with this guy. At least he's not. He very much could, but it's not going to be that, at least immediately, until we watch him play. So I'll give the Mallards a B. I think it's probably a fair grade. Oh yeah, and also I almost forgot. I almost forgot the other player they took, Matt Carlington as well at number 8, which, as we've seen, is going to be possibly more of a scouting tool. So maybe the scouting tools with Jimmy Norp could finally dethrone the D-backs from a 3P, and could help Coleman and Irwin develop their skills. So I'll give him. I think I'll probably stick to that, though. Even though I forgot the pick, I'm probably going to give him a B. I'll give him a B-. I'll give him. It might be a bit harsh, but I'll give him that. I would honestly give him a B+.
B+? More is right up there with the Magic.
I think so. I mean, I think the Magic were definitely an A- in my opinion. I think the Magic got their player of the future.
Yeah, I felt like, I was a bit tempted to call an A, unless it was like, oh my god, like this is immediately getting to a World Series contender, which they're not yet. But I mean, you could argue it for the Mount. But going back to the Mouths,
it's a low A-, but it's definitely, I think, an A-.
Yeah.
I think they definitely got their player that could take them to new heights.
Yeah.
And Preston Colm is realistically exactly what I think the Mallards needed. So I think they would get a B+ for that.
All right, interesting.
It's a B or B+.
Interesting. I'm gonna say B- because I'm a bit more concerned with how they necessarily use Preston Coleman, how much they could use him, because we've seen prospects for the Mouths, like Braden Davenport, and that didn't very much happen, or Johnny Bean and Ben Lice, or John Lice, or Ben Lice, whatever his name is. I know I'm butchering it. I apologize. But we've seen guys in the past who appear once in the blue moon, but usually it's the core guys that Tommy plays. So we'll see how that factors in for Preston Coleman. I hope he plays, because I know he's definitely got the ability to do it. But I'm gonna say B- right now. I'm gonna be cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way, as a Mallards fan and as an analyst. So B- for the Mallards. Eagles with Carson Urgitis. I mean, this is also, I guess, a cool point while we're going through the grades. With the fact that now we've had Trey Flood and Landon last year, and now Carson and Preston in this draft, all 4 players from the Bay City Bonecrackers team, that team that's based on Bay City Wiffle guys and played the MLW tournaments the past couple of years, All 4 of them are now in MLW. That's the first time we've had an MLW tournament team have all their guys make it to the league, which is kind of sick. I'm not going to lie. I thought I'd bring that up for a second, but in regards to, the draft in this, I'm not necessarily sold on Carson Uritis. I mean, I think the team's already sold, so I think it also, like, we're talking about MLW, but the fact they're going to, have opt out of draft starting next year. I think this is a year where if I was Dan Schultz, I probably have opted out because I'm not sure that you're really going to play Carson when you already have, Len, your guy that's sitting on your bench. But I mean, it's gonna be cool to have the brothers able to play on the same team. It's kind of like me and my brother and I when we got to play with the Defenders in 2020. So I think it'll be a cool aspect. But it's hard to necessarily grade this as a talent move and more as a chemistry move. So I'm gonna give the Eagles. I'll give them a C. I'm not wowed, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a fully wasted of a pick. I'll see. I'll give them that. Jake Lawman for the Preds. I mean, Preds actually drafted the Wiffle Ball player for once. I mean, it's a Christmas miracle for them because Alex Ward is taking a lot of the guys that he's known from, like Alamo and colleges that Ryan's known with baseball talent, and not necessarily any guys that come from the Wiffle tree like a lot of this list does. So to see them going into the Wiffling well that Michigan has with all the leagues that goes on, particularly now with with the now defunct Portage Wiffle League, with Jake Lawman, who has also been the player with that league's tournament team, has been performing well for the last couple of years. A player that's been rumored to become an MLW probably since 2020. So they get themselves a really solid pitching option. And honestly, it could be a very interesting choice for the Preds to see how much they use him compared to Stephen McGlade, who gets the number 2 job behind Ryan Cratch. And then even if not, you have a number 3 arm which can fill in from time to time, and honestly could probably be a decent use. So I'll give the Preds. I'm gonna give them a C plus. Only because the fact that it still doesn't necessarily affect the fact that they still have a 3-core hitting line, but I don't think that much is changing yet. And this pick, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't necessarily do it for me in terms of getting Jake Lawman in the lineup as a real huge hitting piece. So I'll give him a C minus. I'll give him that. I mean, it's kind of tough to rank him with the Eagles, kind of like that. But I think the Preds need a little bit more. So I'm a bit more down the grade. Jacob Piska for the D-backs. Outlier pick, considering that this wasn't a player that was talked about all that much, compared to some of the top guys, like the top 3 we basically knew was coming here one way or another. But with Piska, you get their pitching arm, but is he really going to play over the likes of Trey Flood, Heath, Jimmy Norp, Michael Shima, with all the guys they have in that system, and Casey Bennett too, in terms of pitching, a player that they already also don't use Bennett, and they don't use Bennett and Flood all that much. So is it really going to be another souvenir on the old wooden pine of the Meadows? I at least think it's going to be. So I'm not sure there's much use of it. I'm going to give them another C grade. I'm not necessarily fully in love. For the last couple of picks or the last team to be involved in this, the Coastal Cobras with Chris Barnowski, I'm probably going to give it a D plus, only because and you're going to say, well, it's another brotherly situation like your Gaitis brothers on the Eagles, but then again, I don't think Chris Barnowski really has much in the way of Wiffle experience and accolades and stuff. So I just don't see much value in that. This was probably one of the picks, like almost like an AJ Ackerman. Could be a bit more forgetful when we talk about this at the end of the season or even by midseason for that. So I'll probably give them a D plus and probably say they had the worst draft. But then again, the Cobras got themselves a monster team right now, so they don't have to change much right now considering the run they just went on. So I probably would rank them that, and maybe you could argue giving the Magic the A minus. I think you could argue it, but that's how I probably would draft the teams. And I don't know, Connor, if you would agree with those picks. I know that probably in this draft I was pretty underwhelmed outside the top 3 picks, but then again, is it really on the board that the teams made a pick like, oh my goodness, did we really solve the need, or are we just picking fish and chips right now? Because that's kind of how I take it.
Right. Outside the top 3, yeah, I agree with you. Based off the videos that I've seen of the guys, yeah, I mean, obviously, Grant Miller, number 1, he's basically the A plus of all A pluses.
Yeah, for sure.
At least for their purposes. I mean, I definitely think that I don't know. I like I liked the Magic in the way that they picked who was it? AJ Ackerman, you said, right? Was like their undrafted.
Yeah, it was Ackerman, correct, yeah.
He was their undrafted free agent.
It was, correct? Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the fact that he was one available, I honestly like it. I mean, the fact that they were able to grab him, they obviously wanted him, so why not?
Yeah.
So I mean, Grant Miller will be a player that can turn their team around, take them to new heights. Carson, he can definitely help out right off the bat for the Mallards, but I don't know. Other than that, it's kind of like shaky.
Yeah, which I feel like it's probably like I was alluding to. I was giving the grades. I kind of made the comment that this is probably why MLW is going into the opt-in opt-out system for next year. Because if you're half these teams, do you really need to add anything? Like if you're the Coastal Cobras, do you really need to add a piece right now? If you are the Downtown Diamondbacks, who already have a long roster and arguably having guys that are just sitting right now on the pine, not getting enough playing time compared to what their talent is, do you really need a Jacob Piska? If you're the Preds and you're going to probably roll the same 3-man lineup out every single season as they have been in the try and true formula, are they really going to need another player when they sometimes don't even play as much with Stephen McGlade? And they kind of toy with them a little bit. So, I mean, I don't see them really going beyond that 4 when they have to. I mean, Carson, your guy, this, I mean, could be, I mean, maybe you could argue Carson guys get some playing time, but I mean, we don't see Landon getting much playing time, especially when he's been more, I guess you could possibly see more of in the pitching stance. I mean, it's gonna be hard, obviously, for him with, Allen and Schultz in front of him, but, I feel like, that this is going to make things interesting. I'm wondering how this affects like transactions now, because if you now trade for a pick in the future year, does that obligate that team to be involved in the draft? Or does that mean like, that if a team drops out, does that mean that nullifies the trade? Like there's been nothing dropped from MLW that specified how that works, but I gotta assume if you trade, you're involved regardless. So I don't know. And then I don't know. It's weird how this thing goes, but I could definitely say that I think, in my opinion, the last couple of drafts, like especially like last year's back half and this year's back half, it's been a bit underwhelming. And this one's where definitely you could tell. I feel like they're running out of talent at the moment, and they're really running the well dry for guys to come into MLW. At least from like more of a backyard sense. I mean, they could pull all the mall guys in here. We could have the most beautiful league of all time, but I mean, for competitive balance reasons, obviously that can't happen. But I mean, I toss it over to you though, Con, for a sec, because I mean, I feel like the draft's a bit, a little bit, I guess a bit, what's the word I want to use? A bit washed out, a bit, a bit bland. But I mean, maybe this is kind of the reason why they're doing it. I feel like it's very evident.
Yeah.
You agree? I feel like it's so too. I want to make it more of an argument, but you really can't counter that. I feel like it's set in stone with this kind of stuff, which I find weird because MLW's got several 100,000 subscribers. They get dozens of teams to their tournaments. They're telling me they can't find enough guys that want to play MLW. Like, there's got to be more guys available. Like there's got to be more than this. Not to say that the guys in the 8 are bad by any means. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, there's got to be enough guys where we can have 8 picks where we say, "Oh my gosh, that player's sick. We should take him." Like there's got to be more wow factors. I'm not just saying from MAW or ECW, the East Coast guys that have been coming over, like those more pro fast pitch, big barrel guys, but guys in Michigan, from guys like a KWL or a PWL, from Bay City. Like there's got to be more than this. So I'm hoping in future years where we have less picks, maybe that makes the quality of pick better, and maybe makes the selections a bit more worthwhile. But I don't know. It's a bit interesting. And honestly, I've got to be honest, wrapping this whole thing up, I was not really excited for the draft this year. I feel like last year or the last couple years where it's peaked, I feel like this year was going to be a year that, like going into the season, like it wasn't wholly talked about the draft. It wasn't really publicized as being a big year for the draft. So it was hard really to get hyped for it. And I mean, outside the couple picks, it really wasn't nothing really to really shake the league up, apart from the Magic, of course. But for the other teams, I feel like it's a kind of a copy paste from last season. So we'll have to see how it goes for that. But we are going to see how that goes after we take this short little break, because Connor, we're going to dive into all 8 teams. Very similar to how, like, if you've ever watched, like, for those listening, with Urinating Tree, if you ever watched the Haters Guides, which is kind of half a inspiration for the Wiffle Almanac in the first place. We wanted to at least dive into like all the individual teams and talk about the storylines for some of the teams and how they're going to, how they possibly might perform this season. So we want to dive into all 8 teams, give them a chance to shine. But of course, we're going to take a quick little break here first and get into it in a short little while, right here on the Scuffin It Up podcast with Ben and Conor. Stay tuned, folks. welcome back, Wiffling fans, back into America's #1 Wiffling show, not named Shut Up Stein. This is, of course, the Scuffin It Up podcast, bringing you back into Studio 8 here in Poughkeepsie with the greatest Wiffle warrior in the world, Ben Benjamin Fiore. Joined as always by Conor DeCasta, joining us from his now Emirates first class suite, which is somehow decorated in Boston Bruins gear, even though we all know they're definitely not winning the Stanley Cup this year, even though they won the President's Trophy and broke every record in the book. Sorry, I'm a New York sportsman. I had to get that off my chest before we continued on the show. Conor looks disgusted at me. He rolls his eyes, but he knows I'm right. The only thing that then could be worse than the Bruins win the Cup, Conor, is if the Maple Leafs win a playoff series. That's all I'm going to say.
Leafs win a playoff series. I'm retiring.
Sure, bud. Sure. You listen. You get great benefits on this podcast. Why would you want to leave? What's he going to do? Watch Liam flying?
Well, don't give me that incentive. Now I actually want to just watch that over and over.
Oh, shoot, I should have said that. Damn. I forget. The memes, they're too powerful. What am I going to do? Oh, no. Shoot, I should have been more careful. I should have gave you a Scatman Joe instead. Something to do with
God.
Him.
Okay.
But, I think we're getting over the viewer sets on that one. Intellectual memes. If you want to do a podcast on intellectual memes, let us know. We'll be sure to crank that out faster than I can crank that.
Maybe that'll just be you, Ben.
I think by default you're along with me. Otherwise, it's not a podcast. I don't know, but regardless, before we get into talking more of the MLW, more of the team deep dive, I did want to, of course, throw our traditional shout out, of course, of us, what we're doing here on this podcast. If you want to stay up to date with everything that is going on with our show, with including episode updates when there's releases, especially also behind the scenes stuff, if we get the chance to do that, you can follow us across social media at the link or the username. If you're watching the video podcast, you'll see at the bottom of your screen. For those of you who don't see it, it's at Scuffin It Up. That's at SCUFFINITUP. You can find us on several different social media platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, and now YouTube for the video versions we've been doing for season 2. So if you like the audio version, if you're getting this on wherever you get your podcast and you want to see a bit more of the flavor of the podcast, go give the video version a try. And of course, if you're watching the video version, give it hashtag Conor 5 stars on the ratings for all the episodes for our show. If you're listening to the audio version, all the support is greatly appreciated because then the algorithms can show the rest of the world how much of an absolute degenerate I am covering wiffle ball in my early to mid 20s. It's truly impressive stuff, but go give some love. Again, all the support and love is appreciated, and you get to follow all the cool things we're going to do throughout this very long wiffling season on this podcast. So go check it out. Follow, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Hit the bell while you're at it. I don't know. Maybe I know it differently. Hit an actual bell. Don't hit virtual bells. Virtual bells are dumb. Hit a real bell. Be a man. Regardless though, that's our social media pitch out of the way, and now, Conor, it's time for things to get very juicy indeed, because we're going to go into all 8 teams and give our thoughts on how they're going to perform this season. As if we didn't already do that bit already, but now we're going to do it with a bit more of a depth, less off the draft and over the overall courses of the teams. We're going to dive into all 8 of the teams, more so against how much we're going to think if there's going to be like what floor or ceiling they can have. So basically how good or how bad the seasons might go for the teams, as well as maybe an impact player or two that's really going to take the team to the next level or where they want to go. So that's going to be the things we try to focus on in this, along with some pressing questions for the teams. And we'll kick things off in alphabetical order with the team which tragically lost their first trip to the World Series since that tragic 2-0 loss in 2017. Of course, if you're in the know with MLW, I'm talking about Drew Davis's Coastal Cobras. Conor, I got to start off very, very simply. Of course, they added Chris Baranowski, brother of now MLW Cy Young winner. Jeez, I forgot his other name.
Brendan.
Oh my God, thank goodness.
Come on.
I have myself a brain bleed right there. I apologize. Can't be sure with everything. Geez, I messed that up. Regardless, though. With of course getting Brendan Baranowski's brother, Chris Baranowski, with a 7th overall pick. No losses on the team, at least that have been reported. So you have the full roster from last year, including the likes of Sean Flynn, Andy Durand, of course Drew Davis doing his thing, and of course Tyler Gustafson, aka the man, myth, legend we all call Gus, rounding out the roster for them. And with the roster out of the way, of course, cover who's on the team this year. With their run, having won the Did they win the American League division last year? Am I making that wrong statement?
Yeah, I believe they did.
I should have wrote this down.
Yeah,
but
they
should
did.
have.
They did. I think what was it when they walked it off at the in Vermont? I believe.
That's right. Yeah, they did. That's right.
They won the pennant.
Yeah, that's right. So they won the division, the regular season AL American League title. They also won the postseason postseason American League title after that absolute thriller 3-game series against the Pacific Predators, their longtime rivals. And then, of course, lost the World Series to the Dynasty Diamondbacks in an honestly beautiful looking series, but in terms of the gameplay, was a little bit underflamed by the result. So, after all that jargon, Connor, do you think this is actually the year that the Coastal Cobras finally get it done? Because last year going to the World Series, everyone thought, it's a 7-year curse like the Predators in 2019. The 7th season was going to be it. 7th season for the Cobras, didn't do it for the Drew stash, So is with the team they have, the roster we saw last year with the likes of Brendan Baranowski pitching absolutely finally to his potential after a very underwhelming 2021. Sean Flynn taking a step back, but still being a good piece of the team. Drew being an incredible spark in terms of defensively, arguably the best defensive player in the entire league. And I mean, Sean Flynn, Andy Durand being arguably a great contribution there. With much of that team, and I don't know how, and personally, I don't see Chris being a big contribution. If we see it that way, do we really see this finally being the year the Coastal Cobras get through that monster of American League?
Well,
maybe not even just that. Is this the year that they I think they can get the AL? But are they good enough to win a World Series? Can they finally get the luck to go their way this year, do you think?
The thing about the Cobras, they're going to be hungry. They're going to absolutely want it. Drew is going to go all out. We've seen him go all out, metaphorically and physically.
That's right. They got the shirt made of them going over wall full speed. So, that's to tell you flat out. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question. Full well, and at this point, basically everyone who watches and listens to our podcast knows that I am well into the Sawyer Bean fan club.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Of course, Sawyer Bean fan club. So, you have to give the Cobras the nod here, right? Right?
Let me ask you this question. Did Sawyer Bean get experience during the MLW offseason elsewhere?
Yes. United Wiffle. He played with Ethan Weiner at Blast of the Past, so he's a player.
That's correct.
Who's getting not his experience in MLW, but getting experience playing other fast pitch formats, which is great to see that he's playing in other spots.
That's correct. Is there anywhere else, or is it just that?
Well, also last year, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, considering you don't follow many of the other smaller leagues, but the Kalamazoo Wiffle Ball League, that really solid league out of Michigan I was mentioning with Grant Miller, Sawyer Bean also plays in that league too.
I didn't know that, actually. Wow.
Yep. And so does, while we're at it, Jake Longman, the pick for the Preds, like a lot of the Portage guys, like I think Ty Smith plays on a team with them as well. There's a number of guys that come out of KWL, and Sawyer Bean's one of them. So, he's playing fast. He's playing that medium fast pitch stuff throughout the year, playing UREVs. He's a player who at his age, he's got, of course, that disgusting drop ball. How can you not say it? Es muy bien. He's got that great pitch. Hitting wise, of course, that can always be improved. It's never really a strong suit of his game. You took him for his pitching.
Right.
But I feel like that if he was good in year one, he's got to be working the offseason because he just watch. He pitches hard out in the World Series, and to come up short like that, that's got a lot of fire under your arse to say that we did it once. Oh, yeah. We ain't doing that crap again. Like we're coming for this championship because we know we're capable of winning this thing. So I think Sawyer's gonna be fired up. I think Brendan's gonna be fired up too because. Oh yeah. Personally, I think he's a bit more reserved in terms of the energy and the emotion a little bit compared to Sawyer and Drew, who are just, jumping for joy.
But the World Series definitely brought out emotion, mind you, negative emotion, but
understandably, of course.
But I think that negative emotion all throughout the offseason can be brought to be. Like you said about Sawyer, for example, just like light a fire under their arse, and get them to the point where they want it. They flat out want it this year. If they don't win the AL this year, that's a massive disappointment.
In fact, even like a Yankees fan, like we talk about, if we don't win the World Series, it's a failure. If the Coastal Cobras don't go back to the World Series, season's a failure, at least in my eyes. With the team they have and the energy and the momentum that they have, and they also have an edge finally over the Preds, who, I mean, if you have a match over the Preds, you can honestly beat anyone in MLW. Let's put it that way.
And here,
But
the thing that concerns me about the Cobes, though, I'm not sure I'm liking the pick for chemistry this year. I think you needed to pick someone for talent rather than chemistry, because I'm gonna be honest. What's it? I'm blanking on his name. Chris Baranowski, right?
Yep, that's right.
And so I'm sorry. I'm gonna be brutally honest. I don't see much talent in him at all.
Yeah, and I felt the same. I felt the same way. But again, as I was saying before, like you probably heard me say it, they don't really need talent. They already have much of the pieces. They're in a winning.
Right,
they're in the win mode right now. Like they could opt out of the draft and still been fine. But here's where I get the question though, and I know that we could talk about this player a lot. And I think we saw it last year with, again, like the home run where they won the division, the regular season division title for the American League. Andy Durand, he was in and out last year with other obligations in his life and with collegiate sports. So he missed a couple of series, and it was actually because of sports he couldn't be there for some of the playoff series, notably the World Series. So my question to you is, how much do you think we see of Andy Durand this year? Do you think? I mean, we don't know personally insider exactly how much we're going to see, but do you think that if we see, at the very bare minimum, if we see more Andy Durand in the lineup this year, playing more reps compared to last year, where the lack of reps kind of hurt his ability to perform consistently and be at a high level? If you get more of Andy Durand, you add him to that lineup. Is he the piece that they need come August and September when they play the playoffs? Is he the piece that they need to get over the top? Because when I watched the World Series last year, that lineup's still good, but if they had Andy Durand, I feel like they'd be that much more of a headache with Andy at full power.
I don't know, because what they need, I feel like they need. I mean, Drew is a solid bet, but they need an elite bat in their lineup.
They
need an elite bat.
Which they don't
exactly.
Have.
They don't have an elite bat. Because they have good pitching. They're not the best pitchers in the league, but they definitely have the pitching that's needed all throughout their team. Realistically,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, Brendan being the Cy Young. Case in point being he's the best in the league. He was the best in the league last year. I'm interested in seeing if he brings back what he had last year, and because I feel like, I don't know. I mean,
it's tough. It's tough. But I mean, again, if you put Andy in that lineup, it's got to get better, right? Like if you don't get Andy chucking bats across the entire diameter of the Meadows because he's struck out, got a golden sombrero with 4 strikeouts, it's gonna be a bonus because right? Because the team needs that boost.
I mean, Barron, he's going. I definitely feel like he's going to return and be one of the better pitchers in the league. I mean, I gotta hopefully stick to my Sailor Cy Young sort of.
Absolute jargon! Don't even remind me.
You're gonna call it an awful take.
It is an awful take. I'm just saying, but.
I'm hoping he can prove me right. To be brutally honest, he's probably not gonna. I think more realistically, the Cy Young for next year this year is probably going to be Norp. I think he probably has the best chance to lead the D-backs potentially to even go back to back.
But about Durand though, let's keep it focused on the Cope so we can talk about the other team in a second. Do you really think Durand's the guy where if they get more of him and they get him productive, that's what has to happen? Because I don't know how much the rest of the team can improve pitching wise. Because they have the pitching, right? They have the defense. Right. They're one of the best defensive teams in MLW. They want to improve that. Pitching, right. I mean, you can make minor improvements, but they have the pieces that they need. Hitting's where they need that one extra bat. So is that the key, or do you think they need that pitching to be absolutely perfect to win?
I don't think they need the pitching to be absolutely perfect. They need the extra bat. They need the extra bat. The pitching, they have solid pitchers all throughout the team. It's like you have the Cy Young and a young kid who has very much potential to be like an ace in this league. Like maybe a year out or maybe even 2 years out. Like his drop, like Sawyer Bean's drop ball is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Well, actually, that you bring up that point. If it's not Andy, maybe Sawyer Bean's the piece that they need. Because let's say Andy doesn't show up in the lineup, right? Maybe Sawyer Bean's got to be the one to not just be good pitching wise. Maybe he's got to be the true dual threat this team needs from the carpet and from the box, to be that guy. But then again, I don't necessarily see Sawyer being that kind of guy. I at least don't, and I really see them. And Brendan,
I'm gonna make another bold prediction here.
Oh boy,
but it's not really. It's not. It's
here
not
it goes. Let's hear this bullcrap. Come on.
But this is not a bold prediction, and I don't actually see this being quite bullcrap. Drew Davis seems like a guy who could very much make an at first sketchy trade, but turns out to be a massive piece to their team. I think there's going to be some sort of trade this year for a guy who's riding pine on another squad, for like maybe even for I'm blanking, the guy you brought up before,
Duran.
The guy
No, Duran's not going to get traded. He's one of Drew's best guys. Like that would be the most counterintuitive thing to possibly do. That would never happen.
And
then you're not going to
think about this way though, Ben. Remember the last time Drew made a trade?
Yeah, we all remember the last time Drew made a trade.
Mm-hmm. I think he definitely there's definitely potential that he makes a mid-season trade for a guy who's riding pine on another squad, who has a not top tier, but definitely a bat that can very much lift up the hopes of the Cobras, for a guy who, I don't know. I mean, Andy Duran, he's good, but does he have the bat that I think the Cobras need? No, not really. I think what they're after is a bat, a solid bat. And I think what they might do, they might trade Duran to, I don't know. I feel like they could actually, I feel like the Magic could actually be a team that, or get this.
Go on.
What if they trade to the Gators?
But who are you getting from the Gators? Like Cheatham?
Cheatham.
No, I would never say that trade.
What if they get Cheatham?
No, hypothetical experience, that would be a massive piece that they would get, but that would never happen in a million years for the Gators.
What if they get hear me out. If they get Cheatham for Duran and the Cobras pick?
No, still no. Because you're taking a guy like Cheatham who shows up all the time, and Duran's not there all the time. That's not even a fair trade. Not even close. Now, so if they were the same availability, maybe, but it's still kind of sketch. But I don't buy that trade. But regardless, though, I definitely want to bring it back. I want to cut you off in the conversation because we got other teams to talk about for a sec.
That's fair.
But,
okay.
I think it's going to be the interesting point of this team. And I think whether it be Andy or Sawyer, because we know Drew can hit. We're not expecting Brendan to hit, but then again, he pitches lights out. So if we can excuse that for the time being, I guess you could say for Brendan. But I mean, I think you need one of the guys to really step it up. Even maybe a Sean Flynn, because Sean Flynn had somewhat of a downer year last year, not to the point of like 2019 when he was absolutely the hot commodity that he was at the start of his career. So I think you need one of the bats to really have pop off and have like a Zach Whale in 2018, like a really transcendent year to take this team somewhere. Otherwise, you could still win the World Series, but I think if you want to lock it in, I think they need one of those bats to really come alive, like an Eagle, like almost like an Eastern Eagles team or the D-backs when they're at the full strength. Like they need those lineups to be absolutely firing hot, because our teams AL that have better lineups. Look at the Preds. Offensively, better team, if you ask me. Wildcats, they might suck, but they're going to have a better offensive lineup. So if you're going to win the AL, you in MLW, as well as you got pitch, you got to also hit well. So I don't think they're a bad team, but I think if they get a little bit better hitting wise, and whether it be by transaction, like you're saying, or somebody shows up over the court, gets progressively better over the course of the season, that's what's got to take them there. But going to be interesting to see how the season goes, because this is a big year for the Cobras in terms of their projected trajectory with their franchise. So we'll see how it goes. Personally, I have them right now in my season predictions. I actually have them finishing second with an over-under of 9.5 wins, because I think the Preds will just sneak them out this year. I think it'll flip-flop. between the two teams. But I'll cover exactly why in a little bit later. But I thought I'd share that in terms of like for seasons predictions later.
Okay.
Jumping things down, we already talked about it a bunch, but the Metro Magic, of course, the team that's in the middle of the rebuild. But here's the question: now that Grant Miller's on the team and you have in RJ Wellgate, is the rebuild over, or do they have to prove that the rebuild's over this season with the players? Because go ahead.
They definitely have to prove that the rebuild's over. Because, I mean, Grant Miller needs to prove himself in the MLW scene. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be what Jordan Robles was when he came to the MLW scene. Like, the minute Jordan came to MLW, he was a star right from the get-go.
He wasn't a star. He took him about a series. The Cobra series, it was a little bit of adjustment. I mean, from that point forward, it was.
Yeah, you're right.
But pitching wise, never
thinking about it. Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily fully like prime Jordan Robles yet. Because he wasn't used to the ball yet. But
exactly. After that first series, lights out, basically.
Yeah, seriously.
And so I think that's what Grant has to prove. He might take a series, and like we discussed earlier, I think he actually pitches game 1 of their opening series, and Bonham remains the ace, but I think he pitches game 1. But I don't know. This is going to be a year where, like to use your words, they got to prove that this is no longer the rebuild. This is who the Magic are going forward.
Yeah, but I want to go on that point for just a second. How do you define the rebuild's over? Is it going to be just being a competitive team and not being, frankly, for lack of a better word, an embarrassment to the league? Or is it going to be making the playoffs and kicking out, say, a Wildcats or a Cobes somehow out of the playoffs? If they miss the playoffs, is the rebuild still on? Did they still need to blow everything up, or do you think that even if they maybe lose a couple of games, they have some rocks this year, that it's still a decent year for them? How do you define success for this team?
If they make games very competitive with some of the top dogs, and they still don't make the playoffs, I think that signifies that, hey, we're a team that can actually be feared for years to come. But I don't know.
Because with the picks they made, you would think this team's got to go to the playoffs.
If they don't make the playoffs, then obviously it's obvious that they get a high pick. But I don't know. It's like, if they don't make the playoffs, but they have close games, is the rebuild really over if they need that extra piece to make them a competitive force to be reckoned with?
Yeah, because I also go off that because
by that logic, no, the rebuild is not over if they don't make the playoffs, but they still need one piece. And they only need one piece, I should say.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, because they definitely have potential to make the playoffs.
They do, but here's the fault with the team is that now you have a bit more the pitching pieces, of course, with the facts of Bonham and Grant Miller being the 1-2 punch, presumably for this team. You could find issues that what if Bonham has a down year? What if the hitting with Curdy and Jack Agner, who really didn't look himself last year? What if that continues? Can you expect Grant Miller to single-handedly put this team on his back? If Jordan Robles can't do it with the Mallets and he had a cast of guys, I don't see one guy, even as good as Grant Miller is, I don't see that possibly happening, at least in the current landscape of MLW and how deep teams are. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's going to be tough for Grant, because I think how much pressure's on him is going to depend how well the rest of the team is, which, if we're honest, outside of maybe RJ Wellgate, Trevor Bonham's really iffy right now. Jack Agner, you really know what you're going to get. And Ryan Curdy, and no disrespect to Ryan Curdy at all, but he's definitely not the face of the team. You can't expect to do everything necessarily. So you really need like the other guys on this team to step it up. Not necessarily in the sense you need like the Cobras, you need like one guy to really transcend, because you have a bunch of really solid playing players at the moment, but you need that rest of the team to contribute to the rebuild as much as these guys coming in are going to do a number to really rebuild the franchise from what it was a year ago. So I think it's going to be interesting. Sure, again, as I was saying, Grant's going to probably fix the struggles they've had on offense, but again, the rest of that team's got to pick it up. Otherwise, like we've seen last year with Trevor Bottom, if the offense isn't there, they're going to have a hard time winning games and being a force in the league like they want to be this year. So because of that, because of my pessimistic outlook, I got right now the Metro Magic actually making the playoffs at over under of around 6.5 wins, because I feel like Bottom's going to have a down year. So it's going to come down to Grant Miller maybe grinding out some games at the end of the season to get them in. I think it should be an interesting fight between like them and the Wildcats between them, because they're both teams with major vulnerabilities. And I think they're definitely I think in a different league, in the poor sense compared to like the Cobras and the Preds in terms of where they are in the American League. So I think for them, I think like their ceiling's going to be, of course, make the playoffs, and anything that happens after that, absolute massive win, apart from getting embarrassed in the playoffs. But going to be interesting to see how it goes with Miller and with Walgate. I mean, you could see Walgate possibly pitch too, but then again, that also doesn't solve like the offensive struggles, because again, I don't really see Walgate being an offensive player. If he is, prove me wrong. I'll be happy to change my opinion, but I think we're definitely going into this with a lot of defensive fixes, but the offense still remains a question mark. I think that's fair. Would you agree, Con? It's still a bit of a question mark.
Yeah, their offense is still, I mean, even with Grant Miller, their offense besides him is still very much a question mark.
Yeah, so we're going to see how it goes.
You forgot to bring up AJ Ackerman as well.
Yeah, but he's not. I'm going to be rude, and this is going to be rude now. I say it in this tone, and forgive me, God, for saying that, but I just don't see him getting much playing time this year or getting much of a contribution, personally. Unless there's something about this kid who's just absolutely falls like a Ryan Curry, like an accident kind of thing, like almost like a hook, or like a Big Speed kind of thing, like back in the day from the OG previous teams of old. If that's one of those kind of things, it could be something. But at least until we have footage of him, it's hard to really give him the green light for me to say that this kid's gonna do something for this team, or has the opportunity to do something for the team. So we'll see how it goes with the team.
I mean, we can't overlook him, but definitely
hard to judge.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, of course, if the offense gets there, they have the potential to possibly to definitely improve this team for this upcoming season. But unfortunately, you make your draft picks are investments, and like investments in real lith, they're not always a guarantee with stuff. So we'll have to see how things play out for the new look, I guess you could say, Metro Magic in 2023. Continuing down the list in the American League. We already did the Cobras. We've diven into the Magic. We are going to dive right down into the Pacific Predators. And going back to like the Cobras, like I mentioned before, this team, much like the Predators, it's a bit more like a very much almost like a conflicting like duel of the fates kind of thing, like Star Wars, because both teams are in the same boat in my opinion. World Series or absolute bust. Because this team was this. You remember watching Game 3 of the ALCS last year? This team was this close to winning that American League title from the Cobras and going to the World Series, which some might argue that they may provide a better series with their experience, but that's not the conversation for right now. But regardless, they added Jake Lawman to the team for the roster this year. So they get more of a pitching depth, even though maybe they necessarily don't need it, if you ask me. But I think still the rest of the team, McGlade, Ryan Cratch, Alec Warder, Brendan Russell, who had a phenomenal first half of the year last year. And I think the Preds are going to hope that they get something like that for a full year this year in 2023. I think they're just a really solid team. I mean, the chemistry of however many years they've been playing together, I think is just, hitting another high. And I mean, everyone thought after 2019 that they were going to possibly fall off a little bit after they got that crushing defeat in the 2020 ALCS. They're a team that the last couple of years that's been in stride with a lot of these teams, competing in MLW and trying to, win championships. And I still think with this team, they're totally capable of it. So, I mean, for this team, I have to toss it over to you, Con, to see what your picks are. Personally, if I had to see what has changed about this team to get to the World Series, I think it's more of a development issue for them. I think they just need luck. Like seriously, again, like I was saying, they just got the wrong cards at the wrong time last year, at the worst possible time at ALCS, and that was the reason why they didn't go. But I mean, do you think that? I think it's fair to say that they could go to the World Series this year and very much get a match and that title contending in that conversation, wouldn't you?
Here's the thing about the Preds. They know how to make contact. Mm-hmm. They have solid pitching, and when they're at the plate, they know how to make contact. They won't always hit the ball out of the yard, but they know how to make contact.
I wouldn't say that because I mean Ryan Cratch had a number of bombs last year, so did Al Gore and Brendan Russell. They were actually a really efficient team last year. They would get a walk or a single, and then they get a big 3-run bomb in the grand slam, and then you have Ryan Cratch with a 3-run lead, and it's good day, good afternoon, good night at that point.
That's fair. I mean, Cratch is still Ryan Cratch, but at the same time, they know situational. Well, I was gonna say situational baseball, but this is wiffle ball, Connor. So get it right. But yeah, they know situational wiffle ball, I guess you could say. But that's I think the key for the Preds is they know how to play the game the right way. They don't like try to hit bombs every single at bat. They go out there, they try and hit the ball to a gap, and I mean, albeit obviously there's small gaps because it's a small field, but still they find their way on base, and with how their pitching situation is right now, I see no reason why they can't potentially even go all the way this year. And yeah, I agree with you. They definitely need at least a little bit of luck to be able to get over that hump and get back to that era of predominance.
Yeah, predominance. That's great. You bring that up from 2019. That's actually a really good thing you bring up there, because I mean, I don't think the predominance will last that long because just MLW is so volatile with how good every team is. Apart from, of course, the two, I guess, outliers this year. But I mean, the remaining six, you can make a case in the scenario that every single one of them could win the title. And I think, as you saw last year, this team could very much win if they just get the right. They just get that one extra hit. They get that one extra strike, one extra call to go their way. Maybe they got to pay Kyle to rate the reviews or whatever they got to replay reviews as they do it now. But I mean, we'll have to see how it goes, because I think a lot of teams can rely off last year, because with Jake Lawman being the pick as a pitcher, unless he's going to replace McGlade as pitcher, I don't see that being much of an impact. And if he does, I think a lot of it, again, is going to come down to the core three of all the past years: Cratch, Warda, and Russell. It has been that way, and I think they're willing to, for better or for worse, sure, they're going to live and die by that mantra. So we'll have to see how it goes. And I think still, again, World Series or bust for that team. Going to be interesting to see if they finally get things together and get yet another title to his Hall of Fame MLW career. Last team in the AL before switching to the NL side, of course, it is the Evil Empire, as Connor calls it. Cue the Star Wars music. The Western Wildcats, led by Kyle Schultz. Definitely, I think the question is, I think that this team, after last year, it really is a title contending team. But the question is there really any chance that they even could? Is there what is the goal for this team? Like we were kind of discussing with the draft picks, like is there really a vision for this Western Wildcats team right now? Because I don't really know if there is. And you and I were discussing it before.
Is there even a goal for this team? I think I know you've been saying that Kyle is not one to really experiment with a lot of stuff, but I think this is sort of an experimental year for him. Yeah. I think this is definitely a year where they try to see whether or not 3 solid bats can carry them to victory. Do I think it's going to work? No, I don't. I think it's gonna.
He's changed his mind, folks. I got him.
No. I never said that it was going to work. I definitely said
you remember in the early part of the podcast, you were like, "I like this trade. I'm not gonna lie, going all on the offense." And now you're kind of
I'm definitely saying I still firmly believe I like the trade. I still hold true to that. Because, one, if this experiment for Kyle doesn't work out, I mean, we've said this, I've said this at least a dozen times. If this experiment doesn't work, they get their ace and they're golden for the future. I firmly believe that. If they don't make this experiment work, their future for next season and onwards is going to take off. Mm-hmm. And I mean,
but I want to put in first on.
If their experiment works for this year, I don't know what they still will have to draft an ace next year, no doubt in my mind. But if their experiment this year works, How far are they going to get is my question
I
to
don't
you.
see him going to be on the divisional round because you're not. I don't think with that team you're beating the Cobras and the Preds. Like those seem
No,
destined to.
not at
They
all.
seem like a lock for the ALCS. Unless
Yeah,
I mean the only thing that maybe has a dare maybe try to say is if Graham Miller absolutely wrecks the AL this year like with the Magic. Like that's the only way I
right.
see not a repeat of Preds Cobras in the ALCS. Like that seems like set in stone. But with regards to the team, and I know like pitching wise they still have the ace role. Is the Kyle Nick Saylor pitching thing going to be reliable? Because we saw Kyle really dip off last year. He was very much vulnerable
Right.
against the runs last year. Do you think it's possible? And maybe like we saw like with Tommy Coughlin starting to lose drop off pitching wise for the Mallards and Drew Davis with the Cobras. Do you think it is possible at all? And this is certainly a bit outlandish, certainly an uncanny valley kind of stuff. Do you think Kyle comes out of the rotation this year if he continues to struggle? I mean, maybe see more of like a Jackson Pearson pitching this year, as if they're going to embrace say like a rebuild. Do you think that's possible? Because I think with this team, again, if it's going to be experiment year like you said, you have a young 16, 17-year-old Jackson Pearson who's proven to have talent offensively and maybe has a little bit to work with pitching wise. So I mean, rather than watch Kyle get shelled and possibly ruin the content for the league, give the young kid a shot and give him more opportunities like we saw at the end of last
Yeah.
year. So I mean,
If it's going to be an experimental year, why not?
yeah. Right. So I feel like you can maybe see Jackson. I mean, whatever happens to that point. But then again, I think it's going to be a big year for Kyle to prove that if he wants to be the ace or even just in the rotation, possibly at all, he's got to have a vintage Kyle Schultz here, a true fine wine Kyle Schultz here this year for the Western Wildcats. Because if that happens, we all know offensively they have the piece. They have pieces with definitely the best two hitting duo in all of MLW. I think it's still to this day
Yeah.
with Kyle and Nick Saylor. But I mean, again, you gotta have the pitching to back it up. And you gotta see what happens. Like opposite of the Magic, like it's gonna come down. It's funny we say this because the Magic, it's a question of their offense. The Wildcats is a question of their defense with their pitching. It's almost like an unmovable force against an unstoppable object. Which one that makes the playoffs without them really neither one being really that strong? Only tell how it's gonna work. But I think they're gonna be in very much testing themselves, see how much they're going to challenge themselves for that final playoff spot in the AL this year. I actually want to bring this up point because actually, if they should not, and this is again probably getting the uncanny valley. You mentioned a couple of trades that might happen in MLW. You had a couple of thoughts. I have a thought where if this experiment doesn't work, and let's say the Cats want to go through a full rebuild, do you possibly trade Jackson Pearson? Because he's young and he's offensively, he's passionate about the game. Offensively, he's a little hit or miss, but we know he's got the ability to hit absolute tank missiles. So,
Right.
I mean, he's an asset. I feel like that with his youth and his experience of now only 2-3 years in MLW at this point, that's a sellable asset, I think, because you're not moving Kyle or Nick. And if you want to say get a pitching arm, if you're really convinced that you need to have the Wildcats in the playoffs and Kyle's a competitive bastard like he is, and I'm not saying like he is that a possibility that you trade maybe your third bat to get that little bit of extra pitching prowess to fix the hole? Because maybe that could fix it. Because then you still have Liam Jackson, right? Still Liam Jackson, and then you have Schultz, Saylor, Jackson, and then you could possibly trade someone for Pearson. That actually could work. The more I think about that, I don't know if you buy it, but I like to at least leave that in my own head.
I don't know. It's tough to kind of. I don't know, because the thing about what I think the Wildcats are trying to do, I think they're trying to set their like batting capabilities up for the future.
Mm-hmm.
If they trade away a solid bat for a solid pitcher, I don't know. I mean, there could be there's potential for them to do that, but do I see them doing that? I feel like it's kind of like a 20% chance that they do that. So it's not out of the question, but it's definitely not.
But could you agree?
High.
But could you agree though that if they made the trade and they got someone like I don't know, maybe you get like actually this could be interesting, like a Casey Bennett trade. That's maybe a bit outlandish in terms of getting what the D-backs get, but for the Cats though, you get a kid who's been able to pitch well. Maybe you get Trey Flood. That could be an awesome trade. Trey Flood to the Cats.
I would love that. I mean, I would Yeah, I would love that, but
The commission of Bay City and the commission of MLW be on the same team. How cool would that be? That'd be kind of
right.
sick. I'm not
I
gonna
don't
lie.
know. It's
It's an interesting proposition. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah,
Now, you could. I think if you make the right trade, I think that's a possibility. Because again, if Kyle wants to be competitive and not want to take the year off completely and just not chuck this up as a complete lab rats experiment, that could be maybe the thing you want to do for this team. Because we know offensively they're okay. That's not the issue. They got to get the pitching, and whether that's going to be next year in the draft or this year by a trade or both for being this year next year. They got certainly, I think, a decision to make with how they want to structure the team, considering they already have the offensive duo. They can't move around a whole lot. So I think it's going to be interesting for them. Definitely, I right now I have them missing the playoffs around 5.5 wins because again, I think I don't have faith, and I should probably be I should be even my words here because Kyle, when people have doubted Kyle in the past, he has been able to dial it up. But I think we're possibly seeing the true regression of Kyle Schultz as a pitcher, and I think that's going to inevitably really going to be a big deterrent towards this team's success. So I have them right now at an over under 5.5 wins and finishing last in the division and missing the playoffs. It should be an interesting fight between them and the Magic, but I think the Magic, with the energy they have around that team, is going to possibly propel them up a little bit and give them that final playoff spot. But at the end of the day, I think for the AL side, Preds Copes is going to be the talk of the town with regards to who's really going to dominate at least that half of MLW for 2023. So it's now time to dive into all the teams into the NL, and we will kick things off with the Eastern Eagles, the stalwart, former powerhouse of this side of MLW in the early parts of the divisional era from 2017 to about 2019, 2020, when he won those several division league titles in a row. So, with that team mostly kind of phasing its way out, we have a new generation coming through. And I think it's fair to say that the youngest team in MLW year to year last year from 2021 to 2022 got so good. I mean, Dallas Allen, needless to say, we need to talk about him from what he's done for that team. He really somehow took the A spot from its stalwart that is Daniel Schultz, which, I mean, if that is impressive, I don't know what is. And then you look at the rest of the team where Daniel Schultz, I mean, kind of taking the backseat, but still producing at a very, very capable level. Maybe not to the point where you're still like I guess the face of the team, but still very much a very vital part of its operation, especially in the offensive side. I mean, you got guys like Blake Walker who missed time with injury, but I mean that energy and this ability to still be a good offensive piece at the right time makes him a really solid role player. I mean, you still have Zach Whalen after all of these years, still producing at a high level, and you put those 3 or 4 together, and then you still factor in the fact that they haven't even played Landon Urias much at all last year. I mean, he saw him hit a little bit, but he was a little bit reserved from what I personally think he could have done. So, I mean, just looking overall with the complexion of that roster and the fact that they got Landon's brother, Carson Urias, to make the teammates of brothers in the NL side, as we had the AL side with the Baranowski brothers. I think it's fair to say that this Eastern Eagles team, while young, has the ability to compete for the MLW championship, as well as, of course, competing for this NL, which is so wide open between the top 3 teams, basically every team except the Gators. Sorry, Gators fans, but let's be real, this isn't your year in 2023. But I definitely want to talk this over. That, I mean, as I've been saying, like with what they have with their roster right now, it's really solid, but there's still the fact that this team I think they're close to their ceiling, but they haven't quite gotten there yet. And I'm kind of curious, Connor, to get your thoughts on this. I personally think that if, as a team, you maybe need a little bit more out of Daniel Schultz, and kind of like a situation with like the Preds, you need just a teeny bit of luck, particularly in the postseason. Compared to last year when they were in the division series and they got a little bit swept underneath by the D-backs who went on to win the World Series. So I think this is a team that I think we all know is going to be good in the regular season. But Connor, I think the concern. I think it's fair to say the concern of this team is more so the postseason than it is the regular season. Would you agree?
100%. I would agree. Over the years, they have been able to prove themselves in the postseason on a few separate occasions, but on the other occasions, they've been good, mind you, but they haven't had that capability of going over the top, as was the case last year, for example.
But I mean, again, with this division though, the fact that they got the sure, I'm right there. Yeah, we're good. That they have everything going on. I mean, with the Mallards and D-backs being as good as they are, they're both being successful teams. D-backs back-to-back champs. Mallards looking like a team that could very much win if they get the things to go their way, and they make a couple improvements to their team, which is very much on the up right now. I mean, it's a tough division, so it's like, where do they need to change more? Because offensively they're really solid. Defensively, when they're at their peak, they're as good as anybody in the division, surely. So I mean, do they have to
I
change
don't
anything
know.
much, or do you think they maybe need to take a chance on the bench more with the Urias brothers, or what's got to
Yep.
change? Because I
Yep.
personally think that should happen, because we didn't see it last year, and we know they have game from what they have in Bay City and other tournaments from MLW, and even
Exactly.
including the MLW 17 tournaments as well, being another example of what I mean, personally, more Atlantic. I think Atlantic's better than his brother Carson, but still,
Right.
I think both could say that I think they both need to get their shot this year, and not just kind of as a backster, but at the forefront of this team.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to take a job, because I mean, do you take that job from Zach Whalen after what he's done? That's a tough ask. Do you take
Yeah.
I mean, you could see a swap with Blake Walker, because Blake Walker was probably the weaker part of that lineup over the course of
Yep.
this season. I don't really think you move Dallas all that much, because I think Dallas is
Nope.
so surprisingly good bat. I think he's definitely worthy of keeping that position for the time being,
But
heading into
I
the
mean,
year.
well, still, Dallas is one of the top pitchers in the league too.
Yeah, I mean,
Think
but
about
I'm
that
saying
too.
DH him out. Can you DH in MLW? I think the rules allow you now to do that.
I think now they do.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even regardless, I almost forgot too. You got the 4-man rule, so they're gonna have to bat 4. So you got Allen, Schultz, Walker, Jurgitis.
I think which
Landon
year guys?
Jurgitis.
Landon, right? Yep.
Landon,
Yep.
yeah, I should be a bit more
I think.
specific. That's a
Yeah.
valid lineup, or because you have to bat 4. So I mean, you are going to see him on that, because yeah, that's going to work out. So I mean,
I think it. You said with the like what you said with the Preds, they need luck. Same thing goes with the Eagles. They need luck, because I don't really know what more they need. I mean, when it comes to them and the Mallards, I think they kind of flip flop the top of that leaderboard, and then it's the D-backs.
oh,
But
interesting pick there. I gotta say, the defending champs doing them dirty.
yeah, I mean,
Regardless though, for the Eagles though.
yeah, I think it's kind of like a flip flop between 1 and 2 for them. I don't see them really falling to 3. I think they've always been good enough to be in that top 2 throughout the regular season. But yeah, come postseason time, they need that little bit of luck to be able to get themselves over that hump and get themselves, well, first off, to even get themselves into the NLCS in the first place, and then to go beyond that and get themselves into the World Series. And I can definitely see it happening this year. But I don't know. Which team are you going to next? Is it going to be the Mallards? Because I'm definitely feeling like the Mallards are going to give them the biggest run for their money.
Well, I mean, it's going to be the Mouts. Yeah, it's going to be the team after this. It's going to be the team I can't my eyebrow your prediction about. It is, of course, the Downtown Diamondbacks, the 2-time defending MLW champions. The first time we've had that happen, I believe, since the Wildcats in 2014-15 back at Colts Field. So great to see that achievement for them. And they're, of course, this year, as Jimmy would, be gunning for a potential 3-peat in this incredibly diverse National League side of MLW. But I mean, I think it's fair to say that Jimmy continues to be crafty with himself, and even at times last year with that team, with the fact that he was kind of struggling with pitching wise, laying a bit more walks, being Maselli's consistent on the flat hill. Jonah Heath was at parts last year inexistent from what he was in previous years, especially offensively, and really struggling as number 2. So I mean, it was interesting to see them kind of rebound. And honestly, when I saw them last year, 5-10, did they deserve to be in the playoffs on their pure play? Honestly, no. I think the 2 teams that deserved it the most were like the teams you said, the Eagles and the Mallards. But then again, they just run back-to-back World Series, and they just got even more depth. They just got Trey Flood and Casey Bennett the ability to go watch that World Series and experience that. You ought to tell me the rest of that whole entire team's like, if we could do it once, we can keep doing it again. And guess what? We're going to do it again, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year after that. Because when you have a guy like Jimmy North leading the team, it's like a Michael Jordan. It's a transcendent figure. Like in MLW terms, anything is possible when you got Jimmy in that lineup. And I think it's fair to say that you even got Jacob Piska now. You have even more pitching depth. So if Jonah Heath runs into issues, you have so many options pitching wise. I think like they're so deep pitching wise. I love it. But you're nodding your head?
No.
What do you mean?
I strongly disagree with you. I'm going to be brutally honest. I strongly disagree. As good as Jimmy is, and as much of a face of MLW Jimmy actually is right now, I don't know. I think I feel like this is the year teams start to figure out Jimmy.
They did kind of last year, but look at last year's in the playoffs. They figured out Jimmy, and then Jimmy figured out how they were figuring out Jimmy. So it was just a big Uno reverse. And how much he studied. He was at games last year, taking notes in the playoffs, the end of the regular season.
Right, and I remember
that dude is
that.
so studious. He's like 2 steps ahead of everybody else in terms of his approach in every single game. Like you cannot count Jimmy out.
To consider him the Michael Jordan of MLW is taking a massive hit at Cal Schultz, though. I'm sorry.
Maybe I should have gotten that far, but I mean, he's like the kind of guy where he transforms a team, and he's a guy who also has success at the same time. Like he's a Patty Mahomes. Like you put him in the game, like you know this game could go turn a 180 at any given point with one swing or one pitch. I mean, you can't disargue at least that part.
Yeah,
he's
the most solid two-way player in the entire league.
Like when I compare to Michael, when I compare to Michael Jordan, I'm not saying greatest player of all time necessarily, but I'm talking the guy like you walk in the game, like this guy's going to turn the game around at any point. Like he just has the ability to just turn it on and just seize a moment, no matter how big or small. Nothing really phases the kid. Let's be honest. I mean, and almost in that sense with how good Jimmy is. I think this year, where I want to see him improve, and wonder if he does, is with his management, because he's played a lot of the guy we saw him last year. He has all the depth. Who is he putting out there? Shona Heath, Michael Shima, and himself, and the occasional Casey Bennett, like we saw at the end of the year in the regular season. But him and Trey Flood didn't play in the playoffs. So now the four lineup rule, this is going to play right into the D-back strategy. Will not play into it, but it's going to certainly question it. Is who do you trust off the bench? Do you trust Casey? Or do you trust Trey in that situation? Because
100%, I'm thinking it's Trey Flood.
But Casey didn't pitch half bad last year, so I mean,
no,
you could actually argue Casey as an emergency number 2 situation. I think there's going to be there could be a fight for that number 3 pitching spot of who goes after Jimmy and Jonah, provided Jonah comes back to his former 2021 self. I think that's a interesting point.
At the same time, Trey Flood is the more solid hitter between the two. So when you think about,
I don't know, Casey put one over the corn last year in Fenway, Little Fenway. So I gotta give him that.
I like Trey Flood as a player though.
And Casey Ben was a contributor to that walk off on opening day. So I mean, the kid's got a clutch factor, and he doesn't look all that assumed to be all that good at service level. He's had some moments where he's impressed me, honestly, and I think I wonder this too. Because Jimmy's got to sit one of these guys down, because you can't play everybody. Because now you got Piska, you got Flood, and you got Bennett on your bench. 2 of those guys are going to ride the pine, right? So is there going to be a tension between guys to possibly almost like we see like an F1 to make an instance like this? Like we're going to see teammates competing against each other to be in the starting lineup and contribute to the team, especially for when it matters come the postseason, not in August and September. So do you feel like that could possibly distract the team, or do you feel like Jimmy's? Because I feel like that could be, if not handled correctly. We've never seen like an operation like this where we've seen guys this much talent and this much neutrality. Like this isn't like a serious like best friends group where they could like hash it out, kind of.
See, here's the flaw with your logic here. What I'm thinking is there's really no negative impact that's going to be had on the team. Realistically, what I think he's going to do. He's going to put in for probably the first 2 series, maybe even a third if it gets to that point. The player that performs better between those games, they're going to stick with him for the rest of the season as like that 4th batter or that 4th guy to have on the team.
So you kind of foresee this being like a quarterback battle. We're going to put the guys head to head, and whoever wins this thing gets the job.
Exactly.
Kind of thing,
right? I think it's going to be more like, to use your words, like a quarterback battle sort of deal. I think it'll be like a healthy sort of battle, not like any bad blood between the two guys. I think it'll be more healthy.
But they're close. But they're close. In terms of skill level, and you can make a case. I think objectively, by analysis standpoint, both could be in the lineup and serve a very good role to the team. Like you have, especially the number 2 pitcher, like I've been saying, Piss could take the role. Casey Bennett, Trey, all 3 or 4 of them can all take the role of number 2 pitcher, but only one of them is going to get that role. And who's that guy going to be? Unless, I don't know, Jimmy's going to pull something out of his arse, and all of a sudden we're going to see the first 3 pitcher rotation in MLW. Everyone gets a game each, which I don't see happening because you want to win games. And I think Jimmy should still, probably get 2 games unless he's tragic, really off the pace in terms of his performance. So, right. I think it's almost like a super team like we see in the NBA where there's so much talent. There's naturally going to be a competition between teammates for who's going to be on the field and who isn't, and that's what I fear. Like Jimmy's got all this talent.
I wouldn't fear that.
I'm not saying he doesn't run a good club and not a good collection of guys amongst him that really vibe with the team. But there's gotta be a give somewhere. Like you're doing so well, and everyone wants to be a part of this really cool experience playing alongside the Jimmy North. So I mean, I feel like there could be a chance, and even if let's say if there isn't, you gotta deal someone. Like I wouldn't be surprised if someone gets involved in the trade or something like that because there's just so much talent and they're just riding on the pine again, like the Preds, like also I guess in a bit like the Mallards in previous years. Like it's such a weird situation to have all this and not know what anything to do with it because you might keep a player on the pine, but you might need him in the playoffs if someone can't show up for availability reasons. Then what happens? Do you have the same faith in that guy?
Boom.
Exactly my point.
Like I mentioned before. Remember how I was mentioning
you gotta get their feet
about
wet.
the Cobes. About the Cobes. I think the Cobes could be a potential sweeter for whoever essentially loses that battle.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think that's because either one of those 2 guys, because we know that it's obviously going to be Jonah. It's going to be
Jonah and Jimmy at the very least.
Yeah,
probably.
Jonah and Jimmy are 100% going to be on that team.
And then Michael Shima.
Day in, day out. And Shima.
And that's the bigger thing. Like, are you going to sit Michael Shima for one of these young guys off the bench?
No.
So then they're going to...
Shima is too much of a guy who's like...
I want to say maybe...
I'm blanking on the word, but... He's too much of a guy that exactly he's the heart and soul right now of the diamond or of the D-backs. Because is he better than Jimmy or is he better than Jimmy or Jonah? No, I wouldn't say that. I would say Jimmy and Jonah are both better than Shima, to be brutally honest. But can Shima deliver in clutch moments as we've seen in the past and very much remember in the past? 100%. But
you got so much talent on this team. It's like if Shima falls off, it's like you got so much options off your bench to go to. Like you gotta toy with it. Like it's a possibility. And even Shima, in that too, is there gonna be a possible beef between Shima and Jimmy because they're best buddies who played with the Livonia teams and how they got in MLW. So to sit your best friend on the bench, we've had our MLW managers like a Dan Schultz be kind of a bit harsh. Not harsh, but kind of like be pessimistic towards sitting your buddies. Like that's a big like social thing to do necessarily, not just as a wiffle ball level, but like to your buddies. It's like leave them out to dry kind of thing. Like you sticking through with them kind of thing. But if you want to win championships, if we're looking at this from a pure win now perspective with what you have, because they can totally win now with this team. We've seen it twice now in a row. You're going to have decisions to make. And again, I think someone's going to get left in the cold, and how that plays into the team. Does it possibly get, and Jimmy said that, I got to think about who I'm playing, and I got to keep everybody happier.
Whoever gets left in the cold, I would not be surprised in the slightest they get dealt to the Cobes. I would not be surprised in the slightest.
Yeah.
Because anyone on that D-backs team would be a massive upgrade as far as batting purposes and just athletic purposes.
Or heck, how about this for drama? What if one of them requests a trade?
I mean, if
that's a bit more outlandish.
If one of them requests a trade, then that's, I mean, is it plausible? Yeah. Is it, I don't know. I mean, It's MLW. I don't know if one of them's going to request a trade.
It
So
could.
I
Again,
think
you have the number. You have so many numbers.
Could it? Yeah. Could it? Yeah. But is it going to be a request? I don't think so. Is it going to be something that happens? I definitely think so.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see because Jimmy's gonna have so many decisions to make. Let alone these guys continue to start be the light at the front of the tunnel for this downtown Diamondbacks team. So I think it's very interesting to see how the bench battle goes. But I mean, in terms of the performance, if Jimmy and Jonah play to their potential and they get somebody off the bench to play well with Shima, they're going to be a good team. They're seriously, I think they're going to contend in this division. And personally, and actually in my over under for wins, I have them winning the division right now at 9.5 games. So if that doesn't tell you my confidence in this team with how much options they have. Well, yes, I am a bit nervous with that things could get sidetracked at certain points in the season if we see with again the battles between guys with so many good guys on this team and contributing guys. With the surplus of talent they have. But again, it's Jimmy Norp, it's Jonah Heath. It's the same show we've seen numerous times. And when you have a division like with the Mallards, who've been a little, I think the Mallards, I think they're going to have a little bit of a down. They're going to progress a little bit this year. Personally, in my opinion, as we're covering them in a second. But I think they're going to find luck this year because I think Jimmy's going to have himself a better regular season than they did last year. I think last year was a fluke. So we'll see how that goes for the D-backs. I think they're going to have a good year. You know who isn't going to have a good year, though? Unfortunately, the Great Lakes Gators. I think it's fair to say that there's not much discussion here. They are by far the worst team in MLW, and I even think comparing them to the Gators, it's not even really close. At least the Magic have a direction with the team. The Gators, to be brutally honest, to Brendan Zerlach, the captain of the team, what in the world are you doing right now? I mean, you made the trade for who did they get the trade for last year? Shoot, Chadwick. That's who it is, Jason Chadwick. They made the trade for him, but then again, you're not competing again in this division when we got the likes of a really good D-backs team, an Eagles team, and Mouse team. Why are you not trying to go get draft picks right now? Why are you trying to compete right now? Which realistically, with the talent on that roster, well, yes, it's won in the past. It really needs an injection of new life and new blood in that team right now. So, I really don't like the formula they're going with right now. They got no draft picks. They're just trying to run the same thing over and over and expecting a different results. And almost like with like we remember when the USA didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2018, what did they say? What's insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Exactly right.
So unless you get lucky and you win some games, which I don't know if you're gonna do. I mean, Jorgensen's not the same pitcher as he used to be. He's been starting to get figured out. You don't have Cheatham to bail out offensively, being the real piece that you're saying your team. Zerlach continues to be waffle away from what his potential could be. And you're left with the team with more question marks than there maybe is room on an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper. So, I really like this competition. This team. I mean, can they compete? I don't think you can put them in competition to be even a playoff spot. Realistically, I really think it's tough for them. But I think it's definitely one to ask for them that we'll have to see how it goes for the team. There isn't much to comment. But weird question: do you think we see Nick Baker this year? Because there was rumors last year that he was potentially going to play at some point in MLW in the future and he wants to come back. If there's a point at a series, do you think we see Nick Baker make a return? And maybe that's what they need. I don't know.
Now that you bring that up, I did see on Instagram there is a MLW fan page. I actually saw a post where it was saying someone had DM'd that specific page that Nick Baker will be returning for 2023.
Exactly my point. So it's like he hasn't been mentioned in any type of material from the league officially yet. So I don't know if it's official. It could be unofficially done, but I don't know what's happening. But if they get Nick Baker to the team, that could be interesting. Now I think it's almost it's like bringing a prospect onto a stumbling in Major League Baseball team. Sure, it's gonna be fun to watch him, but still, I don't think that solves the rest of the team. I think they're multiple pieces away from getting anything back in contention, considering that the NL is
do I still like Cheatham? I pretty much Cheatham is the one spot, like the one like
bright spot.
Bright spot, I guess you could say. Yeah, bright spot, exactly. The one bright spot of their team, or at least I feel like he's the only bright spot of their team. Jorgensen, he was a great pitcher in the past, and to be honest, he still is like a pretty good pitcher. But yeah, you're right. He's starting to get figured out, and his pitching motion, albeit more awkward, I mean, people are starting to figure that out. So they know full well what's coming, and that's not a formula for success.
Unfortunately not, because you have no options for secondary pitching. So, I mean, it doesn't really help you when you have something else to go to. So maybe Nick Baker's that thing. Maybe Nick Baker transforms his team somewhere out of nowhere. And they may, and if nothing else, maybe they put chaos on the playoff order in the NL. We'll have to see how it goes. But I wish I had more to comment on this team. Like, we have commented more about the other team because at least there's something interesting going on. But I really don't see anything good happening for the Gators. In fact, in my win-loss projection, I had them around 3.5 wins, which is very much right on pace with their 3-12 record I think they had last year. And honestly, they really might not even, it's even like Alkerville Defenders 2021 CPWL style. They might not even win a game seriously. Like it is that poor with the roster that they are going to send out. So hopefully 2024 is better off for them, but I think this year is going to be taking quite a big lick in the chops, if you know what I mean. So that's at least the Gators push. But I know you want to talk about it because we said with the Eagles, who's going to be their rival. I think it's officially back on the Eagles Mallards rivalry. It's going to be the matchup on opening day, which is going to be awesome when they play that about a little more than a week from today on April the 29th and out to YouTube on May the 5th, the week after it. But getting back to the Mallards, though, the big question is, of course, have they done enough now? Now, of course, you got Jordan Robles last year alongside with Caden Irwin. You continue to have pieces with Preston Colm. Tommy Coughlin has reinvented himself as a serious bat that we haven't seen from him since like at least 2017. So with the team that they have right now, with you also have the scout pick of Matt Carlington as well to be a fun piece on the side to possibly give them a bit more of an analytical edge against teams like the D-backs and Jimmy Norp, teams that gave them a fit last year at come playoff time. So I think with this team, do they have the depth to win the World Series? Hitting wise, Irwin, Robles, Coughlin, and I mean, well, let's not forget the fourth. I mean, if Coleman can produce, if nothing else, I think you still have 3 solid bats that could very much work. The 4 batter role, I keep forgetting about. That could be a wrinkle that holds this team back. But I mean, pitching wise, I think they're solid. I think that comes down to, of course, Jordan being good. But Preston Colm, if he becomes a really good number 2 option, that could at least patch up some of the holes of a lack of offense, given the fact this is more of a pitcher's league right now. So, again, the question is, I think, is Preston Colm the piece that they are? Even though he's taken maybe a little bit high at number 2, Connor, I want to toss it to you and get your thoughts on this. Do you? I'm iffy on it, but do you think Preston Colm is a piece that could fill the gap and get them to the World Series if they want?
If they want to, I definitely feel like they can. There's a reason why Tommy was watching this kid from 2020 for almost 3 years now. There's a reason. So if he can really be that number 2 to Jordan Robles' capabilities, like I discussed earlier, that's one of the big reasons why they wound up struggling down the stretch is they didn't really have that solid number 2. And Robles, I mean, he wasn't, no one was able to still figure out Robles because Robles is an incredibly difficult pitcher to figure out, but he just wasn't able to just keep up his mojo throughout the entire throughout the playoffs. I should say.
Well, because I mean, he was like the whole locomotive that entire that series was really
exactly.
Literally like almost like a
basically
show.
Jordan Robles and who else?
Jordan Robles against Jimmy Norp, almost like a show in anime. Like it was a protagonist against the protagonist, like this ultimate climax battle between the two. And unfortunately, Jordan was unfortunately the first one to give him that bout, which I mean is a serious knock up to Norp to battle one of the greatest wiffle ballers of all time. But I think there's definitely a little bit still question mark. Like we always said about again this team, they have the high pieces, but at the back of the lineup, there's certainly stuff that can be exposed. Caden Irwin, is he the most consistent, productive bat? Towards the end of the year, he got better, but he's still not the number 3 bat I think they really need to really take this team over the top. And I don't think Preston Colm's going to be it either. So I kind of feel a bit conflicted about this team. Do I think they can get it done? Yes. But I think they need Preston Colm as much as they need him as a number 2 pitcher. I think they really need another 2-way guy in the pitching rotation for him to hit or somebody to hit, whether that be Colm, whether it be Braden Davenport, or I don't care who it is. They just need somebody to take
I don't know.
to be a two-way player. Because look at all the good teams. Jonah Heath and Jimmy Norp, two good two-way players. Dallas Allen, Danny Schultz, two good two-way players. Like, you have these cores of 3 teams, but you need that pair of dual threat players to really make yourself a solid championship contender. Not to say that they aren't right now, but to be a serious winner of the World Series, those teams have had that formula for a while now, or have been around.
I don't know, Ben, because as much as this sounds kind of cliche, Tommy Coughlin has been around the league since the very beginning, and he has been a pretty solid hitter the past few seasons specifically. He wasn't always a solid hitter, but he has definitely picked up his game the past few seasons. Yeah. And especially last season, if you remember correctly, he picked up his game, his hitting game tremendously last year.
Tremendously.
And realistically, it came out of nowhere, but
it really did.
Yeah, I like Tommy as a hitter to have a similar season this year. I don't think I don't know, because like I said, I think it's going to be kind of flip-flop between the Mallards and the Eagles. I think it's going to be a very close battle. Obviously, you already had the D-backs winning the division, and you had the Eagles at number 2, so that means you put the Mallards at number 3.
I did, yes. I know. It's a bold take. I absolutely know.
It is a bold take. And what would you have their win total be?
Well, here's how it is. I'll repeat this in a second when we go over my full season predictions. But
okay.
I had the D-backs at 9.5, over under 9.5. Eagles over under 8.5, and the Mallards over under at 7.5. Like, I think like 2022, it's going to come down to this much. It could come down to one pitch in one game. Like, they're so well balanced against one another. Like, where one's strong, one has a bit more of a weakness. I think they really contrast each other in a really cool way. And I think that especially with the Gators not really in play, whoever gets what seed, and I think the fight to get that bye to the NLCS is going to be a really interesting fight. The reason why I say 7.5 wins is because I think the Eagles are going to keep it up this year. I think they're really going to push for it. I think the D-backs, as much as you doubt the D-backs, I think they're going to have a tremendous year. I think they could push to be the best team in the MLW yet again. Where I see the Mallards falling back is the fact that the hitting, I don't know if the hitting is going to be there yet. Until I see Preston Cole play a couple of games, I don't know if that's possible yet. But if it does, if they do though, immediate World Series favorite if they get it together. But go ahead.
Third time's the charm. Might as well put in a third prediction in this video.
Oh gosh, here we go. The shambles, the heresy that is Conor's predictions. Oh boy, here we go. Go ahead, Conor.
Both the Eagles and the Mallards wind up with 8 wins at the end of the season.
And
what if they have the exact same number of runs and they have to play an extra game?
Well, that much I know where MLW won't happen, because there's rules in place where we had ties before, but it's come down to all the tiebreakers and stuff. So they would have to come up with.
Ah, man.
I mean, a game. But then again, what's the point of game if they're tight on record? If they, let's say they're second and third, like my projections, there's no point, because you're just playing for who's going to be home in games 1 and 3. They're going to play.
No, I'm saying they both tie for first place.
But 8 wins? You think 8 wins the division, Conor? No way.
D-backs have 6, I think.
6? No, that's an understatement, my friend. At least 7 wins. They're going to be a 500 team at least. At least. Come on now.
I don't know.
Again, I think for those of you listening, I think if this indecisiveness tells you about this division this year, you could flip a coin. I honestly could right now rewrite the rankings a completely different way from what I had here. So it's so tough to tell. And I mean, again, the Mallards, it's going to come down to their Achilles heel.
Besides the Gators.
Unfortunately, besides the Gators. Yeah, unfortunately.
Sorry, Gators fans.
Yeah, don't worry.
You guys suck.
Don't worry. Maybe the MLW Fantasy League will treat you guys better than that stuff. We'll have to see how it goes. But gosh, I think I did a little dirty there, if I'm honest. But I think realistically, it's going to be so close. And for the Mallards, it's going to come down to.
And I think it's going to be that close.
what their Achilles heel has been for the last several years, and why they haven't won the playoff series when they were, again, with the old core. And I don't know if they even fixed it yet with the draft picks and what they've done so far. Do they have the third bat in the lineup to transcend their team? Do they have it? If they can get it, you have Jordan Robles to take you to a championship.
What's to say they need a third bat? Why can't they run with the only the two that they have right now?
Look where it got you last year. You stalled out to Jimmy Norp, and season's over.
Right, they stalled out to Jimmy Norp, but they didn't have that extra pitcher that can really shut down a team as far as not giving up any runs. Besides, I mean, Tommy, as much as he was good-ish, he was not against the D-backs. No chance he's not letting up any runs.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I
think their season relies upon how their number 2 pick Preston Colm performs this year.
It really is.
I think that's the big question for them this year.
Like guys, like almost like how Grant Mill's going to transform and really dictate the magic. The Mallards really revolve around getting another contributing player, a big contribution from Preston Colm day one.
Yeah.
And if he's a little slow in that development, if he's not quite the superstar, that could very well spell doomsday for this team. It really could.
Yep.
Because again, this division minus the Gators is so close. And again, you want to play the extra. Do you want to play the extra series? I mean, who knows if that could be a detriment where you got to play maybe a D-backs or an Eagles team which just misses out on getting the 1 seed and they're enticed and then you get swept and season's over. So
at the same time, though, no disrespect to Jordan Robles at all. He remains one of the best, if not the very best, that we will probably see in our lifetime as far as whiffling is concerned. But does he have the potential to carry this team on his back for essentially the second year in a row?
Again, that's my worry. Because
we'll see. It's shaky.
How much do you depend on Jordan Robles to carry the team? Because it's not a consistent formula to rely on one guy forever. Sure, you might get him this year. Maybe they rely on this year and they win it. Great, but it's not something that's sustainable for a long time, even for the best athletes in any other sport. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But the Mallards, I think, are going to be an interesting choice for how they play out this year.
Their season could either be very similar to what it was last year, or very similar to what I predict the Magic season is going to be this year.
In what way exactly?
I feel like, in a sense, the Magic already have a solid ace in Bonham, and they're bringing in an incredible whiffler in Grant Miller, but the team surrounding them is kind of weak. But that's not the case for the Mallards, though, because they have a pretty solid team. And that's not to say Preston Colm is like an outstanding whiffler already. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has potential to be, but he's not at that level yet. But Jordan Robles could carry their team to another. I don't know.
It's tough.
It's tough to predict.
It's tough to predict, but I want to jump into speaking of predictions before we wrap up the show here. We've been on this super long on this episode talking all the predictions, so hope you guys have been able to enjoy this. And I know we've been rambling, so I want to appreciate you guys all listening this long in the podcast. You made it this far, because shout out you guys, you podcast warriors. Good on you for listening, wherever you are.
And if you've made it this far, remember to rate it Conor 5 stars.
Hashtag Conor 5 stars.
And also, if you've made it this far, here's a little Easter egg for you. I love Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
You heard it here first. Reese's Peanut Butter pieces. I can't even speak. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups or Snickers? Because you're not you when you're hungry. Vote now.
It's Reese's.
Vote now on your phones. Find out.
No. Reese's easily take him over.
I don't care. Reese's do commercials. Reese's has better commercials, but Snickers is the OJ. Sorry.
Granted, I do love Snickers, but no, Reese's is the OG.
Listen. AWA, they make a commercial about Reese's. They did about Snickers. That's all I'm going to say. Wiffle Ball is Snickers.
Oh, for God's sake.
Hey, listen, I'm just using my sources. That's all I'm doing at the end of the day.
See, this was supposed to just be an Easter egg. This is not supposed to be some sort of discussion.
Listen.
I like Reese's peanut butter cups.
You want discussion? You want discussion? Left tricks or right tricks? Vote now on your phones.
For God's sake!
Got him.
Crunch bars.
Great times. But let's wrap this episode up real quick with some season predictions for stuff we might see. Setting predictions, I already kind of hinted with the over-unders for wins and losses, but AL, I have Predators winning the division the regular season at the 1, followed by Cobras at the 2, Magic at the 3, Wildcats missing. NL for me, D-backs take it at the top, followed by Eagles and Mallards with Gators missing. And then that's at least my regular season. Playoffs, it's a very interesting prediction, but after a very long, tough decision, right now my World Series have the Predators beating the Mallards in 5 games. That's my call right now.
I do like the Preds this year to potentially go all the way. It's tough. I'm intrigued to see what you would have in the ALD or ALCS, I should say. Would you have Preds Cobes?
Oh, 100%. Like I've been hinted a million times. That's not a debate. In fact, I have the Cobes sweeping the Magic in the ALDS right now.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. I forgot it would be the Magic in that sense, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that's at least my prediction, at least for who I think is going to win. So my early prediction, write it down on a telegraph. It makes you feel better. Preds win the World Series. You heard it here first. Conor, you have to go as in depth with wins and losses for me, but at the very least, who you project to at least win the division, miss the playoffs in each division, and then give me your World Series prediction. Let's hear it.
To make the playoffs, at least for the AL, I think obviously for me, winning the AL is going to be, I think, the Preds, followed by the Cobes. And then I think it's going to be very, very tight battle between the Wildcats and the Magic, which in years past, you would have never expected that in a million years.
Never in a million years.
But I think just the experience out of the Wildcats is going to get them that edge to get them into the ALDS. But I do have them. I would have them falling to the Cobes. And it would be a Cobes. It would obviously be a Cobes, Preds, CS. And remind me again, that is a 3-game series, correct?
3-game series, yep. I mean, if you want to go as far as give me the number of games it takes, go for it. But I mean,
it takes 3 games
again. Okay.
And game 3 is an extra inning game that goes down to the wire. It gets down, I think, to the 7th inning. I think it's going to be...
Oh my gosh. In-depth prediction here. Oh my gosh.
Very much in depth. Very much in depth prediction. But I think the final score of this game is going to be 6-5 in favor of the Preds.
Whoa! He's following my predictions. And honestly, if you get that perfectly right, I will give you my life savings. That is not a joke. I honestly, you heard it on the podcast. I will shake on that right now.
7th inning, 6-5 Preds.
I'll buy you a Bugatti if you somehow get that perfectly right. I would absolutely crap my own pants if that happens exactly. Like there's no way exactly. So regardless, though, I'm getting too hyper about this prediction. At the end of the day,
it hurts to not pick the Cobes to go to the World Series again, but. If I don't know, I think the Preds find their bit of luck this year and make it to that World Series. As far as the NL is concerned, though,
all right, let's hear it.
Winning the NL, I think by the slimmest of margins, probably by the slightest bit of run differential. I know I said 8 before. I think both teams. Wind up with 9 wins. I think it's going to be the Mallards and the Eagles both winding up with 9 wins at the end of the season.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be probably maybe 2-3 runs of run differential. I think the Mallards...
Wait a second. I want to cut you off for a second, but I think because of the way the tiebreakers work, head-to-head comes into that. So basically, whoever wins the series between Eagles Mallards, which will happen next week for a heck of this comparison.
Exactly.
Funny the timing of it.
Good point.
Would actually end up having the tiebreaker. So I mean, if that changed your decision.
So with that in mind, I like the Mallards to take the top spot in the NL, followed immediately thereafter by the Eagles.
Okay.
And then rounding out, of course, is the D-backs. And then obviously dead last, I find the Gators. I think that's going to be a common theme in any MLW prediction. And if they go ahead and prove us all wrong, kudos to them. But I strongly doubt it. I don't like their whole scheme this year. But at the end of the day,
so you got the three you had there. Winning the NL in the postseason, which is a different story, a beast in of itself. Who you got straight up right now?
Okay. Well, first we gotta go NLDS.
All right, you want to go? He's gonna go full ways. All right, I'm sorry. Then. Go on.
Winning the NLDS in 3. Another very close game. I think game 2 is going to be the extra inning game, followed by game 2 is going to be an extra inning game that is going to be an absolute pitcher's duel, and it's going to go down to 6 innings. It'll wind up being a 2-run walk-off home run by Jimmy Norp.
Oh my
gosh!
So
they'll take game 2. It'll be a 3-1 win. Okay.
Oh my gosh! Jesus Christ!
Hey, I gotta go all the way, don't I?
Oh my gosh! I can't wait at the end of the season in the early next year to go over these predictions and be like, oh my gosh, Connor, you got it so wrong.
And what if I'm right though?
Again, I'll buy you Bugatti. I swear I'll do it.
All right. Game 3, however, goes to the Eagles. I find the Eagles I like the Eagles making it to that NLCS, and to be honest, I find them sweeping the Mallards to make it.
That's a big move.
Find them sweeping the Mallards to get to the World Series. Preds in 4. Preds in 4.
You call Preds too? High five. Virtual high five. Of course. Nice. Love it. Sick. So Preds in 4 in the World Series
the Preds
over Eagles. So I got Mallards in there. You got the Preds. Oh, we got an interesting season ahead of us, folks, don't we? I think if we can't even decide ourselves. Buckle up. I think if you thought 2021 and 2022 were good, I think we're due for an absolutely bombastic MLW in 2023, and especially we get the playoff time end of the year. Folks, buckle in.
Ben,
get a therapist because you're not going to be able to understand what the hell goes on. Go.
Let me ask you this question, Ben.
Shoot, quickly.
Do they call you Mr. Bombastic?
No.
God dang it.
They call me Bentastic, I guess you want to call that, or they call me Ben 10. I don't know. I don't know about that one. But I'll also say it really quickly, really fastly. I only have this written down before we go. MVP prediction. I'm gonna go Jordan Robles. Cy Young. Going really quickly. Cy Young. I'm gonna say Ryan Cratch by a hair. Silver Slugger, I think Nick Saylor is going to take it. And Rookie of the Year, I think it's by a landslide, but Grant Miller, at least on that one.
Yeah. I'm with you on Grant Miller for Rookie of the Year. Silver Slugger. Ooh.
Quick fire.
Silver Slugger, I think it's going to be Saylor again. Cy Young, I got to stick to it. Sailor.
Oh my god! Hey, you're committed though. I give you that. But that is again the most outlandish thing you've ever told me. Connor, I've known you for 21 years. That is the most outlandish bullcrap I've ever seen, ever heard, or transcribed in my entire life. But Cy Young, Sailor, and MVP. Gus, come on, say Gus. For the memes, Connor. For the content, Connor. Please.
AJ Ackerman. Oh.
I'm actually be right though, AJ Ackerman.
If he goes off this year, amen.
I'm jumping off a bridge if that happens.
Realistically, I do feel like it's going to be
quickly. First name that comes to mind.
I feel like it's going to be Schultz. Daniel Schultz.
Oh, and spicy choice. Well, there you have it, folks. Long overdue. We have given you your advice. So basically, get on the Preds bandwagon for the season, at least by our metrics, at least by the Scuffin It Up Saber metrics that we have, which are basically just looking at the stats and scrolling through Instagram pages and then making some outlandish predictions based on that. So take that for what you will. Hopefully this does advise you on how to watch the MLW season, which teams to look out for, which storylines to look out for, and all the cool stuff which goes on, which the season starts for us on YouTube in just a little over 2 weeks' time on May the 5th. So we'll be watching. We'll be covering that stuff throughout the season, as I know probably most of you will be at home. Because, I mean, if you're a Wiffle fan, what are you doing not watching MLW? But that's going to conclude this Wiffle's Almanac version of the Scuffin Up podcast, this MLW version of the Wiffler's Almanac for 2023. If you like what you heard from this podcast and you want to hear more, make sure that you go ahead and follow us across all of our social media pages, which we are currently right now on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Scuffin It Up. That's at SCUFFINITUP. And again, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube is where to find us there. YouTube right now that has our video podcast for this season. If you fancy that, if you're old school, you of course can always go back to the traditional audio versions of our podcast, which are available wherever you get your podcasts currently: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more places like that. Of course, don't access the dark web because you might use the FBI might consider you a heretic for taking our opinions on there. But then again, if you're at least watching some of the West, you have freedom to do what the hell you want. So make your own decisions on that. But that's, I think, everything we got to cover onto this week's episode onto MLW. So looking forward to the MLW season. For opening day, I'm just going to do a really quick prediction. I got Eagles winning 2 of 3 in that series, even though which kind of maybe even forces my prediction to have them second in the NL. So we'll see how it goes. Should be a fun season of MLW. Should be a great opening weekend to kick things off. So we'll be following with the rest of you. But that is going to do it for all of us here, unless, Connor, you have something to wrap us out with an outlandish statement again.
Well, not outlandish, but kind of to build upon your opening day prediction. Obviously, to be expected, as I was saying, the fact that Mallards are going to be beating the Eagles by the slimmest of margins. It'll be 2 out of 3 for the Mallards on opening
All right,
day.
let's see. We'll hold the predictions, but that's going to do it for us. For Connor in his Emirates Type 1 suite, he probably should be landing soon, but that's for him. For me in Studio 8, it's always a pleasure. Stay safe, stay awesome. Until next week, see ya!
All right. That was solid.
That was lit. I'm not going to lie.
Time to plug in the phone again.
Folks,
I was
rest in peace for
on like 6% battery.
Just in the nick of time.
I was like, please don't die. Please don't die. Please don't. 5!
And for our listeners still listening on the podcast, as they all say, regardless of what we say or do in this podcast, always remember, at the end of life, we always get norped. See you next time, folks.